The command center's main display flashed red. "Arrest order, active," pulsed across every screen in Naval Base Coronado. Admiral Grant Huxley's coffee mug froze halfway to his lips. 20 minutes earlier, he had been laughing at the woman standing in his office. "What's your rank?" he had asked mockingly, when she'd requested a meeting about training deaths. The woman in the plain gray suit had simply replied, "I don't have one, Admiral. I have something better." He'd found that amusing then. Now, watching U.S. Marshals' vehicles line up outside the main gate through his window, the joke wasn't funny anymore. Master Chief Brennan stood at attention beside him, but something was off. The veteran SEAL's hand was moving toward a salute, not directed at the Admiral, but at the woman. "Sir," Brennan's voice carried an edge Huxley had never heard in 15 years. "That's Avery Lane. Her father was Team 6, died in Kandahar." The Admiral's jaw tightened. "I don't care whose daughter she is. She has no authority here." The challenge coin in Avery's hand caught the light, eagle, trident, and anchor gleaming. The room's atmosphere shifted. Every SEAL present recognized that coin. It wasn't just any coin. It was from Operation Neptune's Spear. Her father hadn't just been Team 6. He'd been on the Bin Laden raid, and now his daughter was here with a federal warrant, while outside, the arrest vehicle's engines hummed like predators waiting to strike. The morning had started differently at 0600 hours. Avery Lane stood at the main gate of Naval Base Coronado, her rental car parked precisely 3 feet from the security checkpoint. The Marine Guards examined her federal credentials with the kind of scrutiny reserved for outsiders attempting to enter their domain. She was stunningly beautiful, with Russian features, her fair porcelain skin dotted with natural freckles across her cheeks and nose. Her high, sharp nose bridge gave her face an aristocratic quality, while her long, light brown hair was tied in a messy high bun, with a few loose curls framing her face. Those captivating green eyes held a radiant and regal presence like a princess, though she wore only a fitted light gray t-shirt, slim dark military pants, and brown combat boots. "Federal investigator," the younger guard read aloud, his voice carrying doubt. "Ma'am, you'll need military escort to enter the base." Avery's fingers unconsciously traced the outline of the challenge coin in her pocket. The metal was worn smooth from 20 years of identical movements. Her father's coin. The last thing he'd touched before boarding the helicopter to Abbottabad. She'd been 20 then, watching the news like everyone else, not knowing her father was descending into that compound until the president announced it to the world. "I have an appointment with Admiral Huxley," she said, her voice carrying neither deference nor hostility. Just fact. The older guard, a staff sergeant with deployment ribbons suggesting Iraq and Afghanistan, studied her more carefully. Something in her stillness triggered recognition in men who'd spent years identifying threats and allies in milliseconds. "Ma'am, the Admiral doesn't typically meet with civilian investigators. He will today." She handed over a sealed federal warrant. The staff sergeant's expression changed as he read it. His hand moved reflexively to his sidearm, not in threat, but in the unconscious gesture of someone realizing the Z were standing at the edge of something significant. "Clear her through," he told the younger Marine. Then, quietly enough that only Avery heard, "Good hunting, ma'am." The base sprawled before her like a small city dedicated to creating the world's most elite warriors. Buildings bore numbers instead of names, their purposes hidden behind acronyms that meant nothing to outsiders. Groups of BUDS candidates ran past in formation, their instructors' cadence calls echoing across the humid morning air. The famous grinder where thousands of would-be SEALs had quit during Hell Week lay empty, waiting for the next class to test themselves against their limits. Building 701 housed the administrative offices of Naval Special Warfare Command. Avery parked in visitor parking, noting the 3 black SUVs with government plates already positioned at strategic exits. Her backup was in place, waiting for her signal. She checked her phone one last time. The federal judge's order was clear. Admiral Grant Huxley was to be detained pending investigation into obstruction of justice, witness intimidation, and conspiracy to defraud the United States government through falsified defense contracts. Inside, the building hummed with controlled energy. Naval personnel moved with purpose through corridors decorated with photographs of SEAL operations spanning decades. Vietnam, Grenada, Panama, Iraq, Afghanistan, and dozens of classified missions represented only by date stamps and redacted locations. Avery's father was in 3 of those photos, his face pixelated for security, but she knew his stance, the way he held his rifle, the tilt of his head when focused. The receptionist, a young petty officer second class, looked up from her computer. "Can I help you, ma'am?" "Avery Lane for Admiral Huxley." The petty officer frowned, checking her screen. "I don't have you on the Admiral's calendar." "He'll want to see me." Avery placed a folder on the desk. The cover bore the seal of the Department of Justice. "Tell him it's about the training accidents." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 5 degrees. Every person in uniform within earshot suddenly found reasons to stop what they were doing. Training accidents had killed 3 candidates in the past 6 months. Officially, they were unfortunate but standard risks of the world's most demanding military training. Unofficially, whispers suggested equipment failures that shouldn't have happened. One moment, the petty officer picked up her phone, speaking in low tones. Her face paled as she listened to the response. "The Admiral will see you now. 3rd floor, end of the corridor." Avery took the stairs. Elevators were confined spaces with no exit options. Her father had taught her that when she was 12, the same year, he'd taught her to disassemble and reassemble a Sig Sauer P226 in complete darkness. "Not because I want you to be a soldier," he'd said, "but because the world is full of wolves, and I won't always be here to protect you." He'd been right about that last part. The 3rd floor corridor stretched ahead like a gauntlet. Officers and enlisted personnel lined the walls, pretending to be engaged in conversations while watching her approach. She recognized the tactical positioning, the way they'd unconsciously arranged themselves to provide overlapping fields of fire if she proved to be a threat. These were warriors, trained to neutralize danger before it materialized. Lieutenant Commander Torres stood outside the Admiral's office. Hispanic, mid-30s, with the kind of nervous energy that suggested he knew more than he was comfortable knowing. His hand twitched toward a salute before he caught himself, remembering she was civilian. "Ms. Lane, the Admiral is waiting." He opened the door and to reveal a corner office overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Admiral Grant Huxley stood behind his desk like a king holding court. 6 feet 3 inches of lean muscle that 58 years hadn't softened. His dress whites carried enough ribbons to stock a craft store, including the Navy Cross, Silver Star, and 5 bronze stars with Combat V devices. His seal trident, the golden eagle clutching a trident and anchor, caught the morning sun. 3 other men occupied the room. Avery cataloged them instantly. Commander Jake Mitchell, Huxley's executive officer, standing at parade rest by the window. Senior Chief Carlos Rodriguez, senior enlisted advisor, positioned to block the direct path to the Admiral. And Master Chief William Brennan, a legend among SEALs with 30 years of service, who stood slightly apart from the others, his gray eyes measuring her with the patience of a sniper. "Gentlemen," the Admiral's voice carried the authority of someone who'd never had an order questioned, "this is Ms. Lane, our latest civilian investigator, here to question how we train America's finest warriors." He gestured to a chair positioned in the center of the room, surrounded by the standing men, a power play as subtle as a sledgehammer. "Please, have a seat." Avery remained standing. "I prefer to stand, Admiral. I insist." His smile revealed perfect teeth, the result of naval dental care and good genetics. "We wouldn't want you to be uncomfortable. Comfort isn't my priority." She pulled out her phone, setting it to record. 3 men are dead. Their families deserve answers." Commander Mitchell stepped forward. "Those training accidents were thoroughly investigated by Naval Criminal Investigative Service. The reports are available through proper channels. I've read them." Avery opened her folder, spreading photographs across the Admiral's desk. Petty Officer Jason Chen, age 23, drowned during pool competency when his rebreather malfunctioned. Petty Officer Marcus Thompson, 24, crushed when fast rope equipment failed during helicopter training. Seaman David Park, 22, severe head trauma when his parachute failed to deploy properly during jump training. Senior Chief Rodriguez's jaw tightened. "Equipment failures happen. This is dangerous training. Not with this equipment." Avery produced a contract document. FlexTech Defense Solutions provided all 3 pieces of equipment. They're owned by a shell company registered in Delaware, which is owned by another company in the Caymans, which traces back to a very interesting investor. The room went still. Master Chief Brennan shifted his weight slightly, a tell that would have been invisible to most observers. Avery caught it. "Admiral," she continued, Your brother-in-law is the CEO of FlexTech. That's public record, Huxley replied smoothly. All contracts go through proper procurement channels. I recuse myself from any decisions involving FlexTech. On paper, Avery pulled out another document. But you had dinner with him 6 times in the month before the contract was awarded. You played golf at Coronado Country Club every Sunday. Your wife owns 12% of FlexTech through a trust you supposedly don't control. Commander Mitchell moved closer, using his size to intimidate. Those are serious accusations. They're facts. Avery didn't step back. Along with the fact that an engineer at FlexTech tried to report substandard materials 3 months ago. Thomas Kramer, 41 years old, married with 2 daughters. He filed a whistleblower complaint that mysteriously disappeared from the system. Systems have glitches, Rodriguez offered, but his voice lacked conviction. Thomas Kramer doesn't. Avery's voice hardened. He disappeared 5 weeks ago. His wife received one text saying he had taken a job overseas. She hasn't heard from him since. The Admiral's expression hadn't changed, but a vein in his temple pulsed visibly. Ms. Lane, if you're suggesting that I had something to do with a civilian's career choices, I'm suggesting nothing. She placed a USB drive on his desk. This contains Thomas Kramer's original complaint, including test data showing FlexTech equipment failing at half the rated specifications. It also contains emails between you and FlexTech's CEO discussing handling the Kramer problem. Master Chief Brennan stepped forward for the first time. Ma'am, how did you obtain these emails? Avery met his gaze steadily. My mother was a federal court clerk. She taught me the importance of documentation. She also taught me that powerful men often forget that their assistants have access to everything. Lieutenant Commander Torres, still standing by the door, had gone pale. His hand moved unconsciously toward his pocket, where the shape of a USB drive was visible. The Admiral followed Avery's glance. Torres, you're dismissed. Sir, I... Dismissed, Lieutenant Commander. Torres hesitated, torn between obedience and conscience. His eyes met Avery's briefly, a silent communication passing between them. Then he saluted and left, his footsteps echoing down the corridor. You're spreading poison through my command, Huxley said, his voice dropping to a dangerous register. These men trust each other with their lives. Your investigation undermines that trust. Your actions undermine that trust. Avery pulled out her challenge coin, setting it on the desk with a distinctive metallic ring. My father believed in the Brotherhood. He died believing his teammates would always have his back. But you're not protecting your men, Admiral. You're getting them killed for profit. Brennan's intake of breath was audible. He leaned forward, studying the coin. The serial number was visible, Nisasa 007, the 7th coin issued for Operation Neptune's Spear. Your father was Phoenix, Brennan said quietly. It wasn't a question. The room's atmosphere shifted palpably. Phoenix was a legend even among SEALs, the intelligence specialist who had identified the courier that led to bin Laden. The operator who had breached the 3rd floor and confirmed the target. The ghost who had died 2 years later in an ambush that shouldn't have happened, leading a rescue mission for captured NGO workers. Petty Officer First Class Michael Lane, Avery confirmed. Team 6, Blue Squadron, killed in action, August 12, 2013, Kandahar Province. I knew your father, Brennan said slowly. He was the best intelligence operator I ever worked with. He was also investigating defense contractor fraud when he died. Avery's words landed like grenades. His last message to my mother mentioned concerns about equipment quality. 2 weeks later, his team's radios failed during the ambush. They couldn't call for support. Commander Mitchell's confident posture cracked slightly. That was investigated. The Taliban had jammers. The Taliban had 7-year-old Russian equipment that shouldn't have affected our latest encrypted radios. Avery's voice carried years of researched certainty. Unless those radios were built with substandard components, unless someone knew they'd fail under specific conditions. Admiral Huxley stood slowly, his full height imposing. Ms. Lane, you're suggesting that I'm somehow connected to your father's death? I'm stating that FlexTech has been providing substandard equipment to naval special warfare for 12 years. I'm stating that multiple operators have died due to equipment failures. I'm stating that you've personally profited from these contracts while silencing anyone who tried to expose the truth. She pulled out a second folder, thicker than the first. 17 names, Admiral, 17 operators killed in incidents involving FlexTech equipment. Each death ruled accidental or combat-related. Each family told their loved one died a hero. They did die heroes, Senior Chief Rodriguez interjected, anger creeping into his voice. Yes, Avery agreed, but they didn't have to die at all. The Admiral moved around his desk, closing the distance between them. At this range, she could smell his cologne, expensive and subtle, mixing with the starch of his uniform. What exactly do you want, Ms. Lane? Justice? He laughed, a sound devoid of humor. Justice? You're a civilian investigator with no jurisdiction on a military installation. What you have are theories and circumstantial evidence that wouldn't survive the first motion to dismiss. You're right about one thing. Avery remained motionless as he circled her like a shark. I'm civilian, which means I'm not bound by the uniform code of military justice. I'm not part of your chain of command, and I'm definitely not intimidated by your rank. You should be. The threat in his voice was unmistakable. Do you know what happens to civilians who interfere with military operations, who spread classified information, who threaten national security? Is that a threat, Admiral? It's a reality check. He stopped directly in front of her, using his height advantage. You're alone on a military base, surrounded by men who've sworn oaths to defend this country. Your investigation ends here. Avery pulled out her phone, showing a timer counting down. 3 minutes, 47 seconds. The sound of metal crashing against my investigation is just through the empty mess hall. You see, while we've been talking, a federal judge has been reviewing my evidence. The same Carter collapsed onto the cold floor. Threatened 8 years ago body tried to investigate your first fraudulent contract. Huxley's face darkened. Judge Morrison has no cut on her forehead. Federal judges have authority everywhere in the United States. All 6 feet showed him another muscle radiating a live feed of the base's main Marines are trying to eat, and you're making a mess. Now moving useless old hag. Including 5 other Marines burst into laughter. Master Chief Derek Chen pulled out his phone, confirming what the phone showed. Maria Santos, we have federal vehicles entering the base of Camp Pendleton. This is a military matter, Commander Mitchell insisted. Maybe it's time to retire, Grandma. Sidearm. This mess hall doesn't need trash like you. It's a federal crime that happens to involve military personnel. Helen slowly pushed herself up from the floor. Conspiracy, and murder years across state lines. Her shoulders seem too thin. That makes it FBI jurisdiction. Murder still dripped from her forehead, but she didn't wipe it away. You can't prove. Instead, she looked at Kramer's body was found yesterday in a warehouse in Tijuana. Beyond the moment. Avery's announcement right hand trembled slightly, but he'd been tortured before he died. The Mexican authorities were very cooperative as once they learned he was an American citizen who had been kidnapped. 2203 hours. The Admiral's composure finally cracked. Her gaze drifting to the window. You have no evidence connecting me to that. 12 knots. Your brother-in-law used his personal credit card at a gas station 2 miles from where Kramer was grabbed. What did you just say? SEAL, Chief Petty Officer Raymond Vance, who now works for Flex Tech Security, bending down to pick up the scattered tray at the warehouse. Sorry, dear. Old people say strange things sometimes. Vance already made a deal. He's testifying that you gave the order. Twice. The timer on her phone then complete darkness swallowed simultaneously. In that every computer screen in the office flashed to red. Not Helen's. Arrest order. A man's voice, active, heavy with Eastern bold letters, accent, followed by Admiral Good evening, Huxley's Phantom name 6. And photograph. I've been waiting 28 years for this moment. Huxley grabbed Avery's wrist. The darkness seemed his grip crushed sudden tension. You don't understand what you're doing. The small programs I protect, casting the operations I oversee. Helen's hand shot out, keep this pushing it down with surprising force. His grip had pulled up her sleeve, revealing a tattoo for the first time. Her voice carried no tremor at all. Dagger of the 7 Marines and 1 old cleaning also known as the accented voice continued. The ultra-classified unit that even most special operators didn't know existed. Jake Master tried Chief to take Brennan's charge, reaction shouting orders to his fellow Marines. He snapped to attention, panic had rendering a perfect salute. Derek Chen frantically tried his radio. We didn't know. His phone showed no signal. Confused. Maria Santos screamed as footsteps echoed closer. She's not just sound bouncing off Brennan's walls in ways that made distance impossible to judge. Task Force Helen wasn't panicking. They're the ones who found Saddam. She moved. They located al-Baghdadi, not bumping into a single table the battlefield before her breathing remained steady, even though there was a mission. She began counting under her breath. Lieutenant Commander Torres entered, followed by 6 shore patrol officers and 4 in what sounded like Russian. Torres had changed something subtle in his bearing. Size 11, he no longer weight distribution suggests he looked tactical gear. Spacing Huxley, the lead marshal announced. Her head tilted. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud primary against the United States government, secondary obstruction of justice, third maintaining Overwatch position. How can you have the right know that to remain Jake's silent? Voice cracked with fear. Torres, Helen didn't answer. The Admiral's voice Instead, was she grabbed Jake's shoulder. You're under my command. Unexpected strength toward the southwest corner. Torres pulled out structural his own pillar here. Stay I've low. Been under federal investigation task force for 6 months. A cold sound that seemed to I've come documented from every meeting, every hiding won't help, Phantom. Every attempt to cover every corner of this place. The
3
room
months of
erupted in
preparation.
motion. Commander
Every
Mitchell
camera
reached for his
angle
weapon,
memorized.
but Master Chief
Every
Brennan's
patrol
hand
route
clamped down on his
calculated.
wrist.
Even
Don't,
scheduled your
Commander.
precious
It's
janitor
over.
shifts.
Senior Chief
Something
Rodriguez
shifted in
stood
Helen's
frozen,
posture.
torn
3
between
months.
loyalty
She'd
and
noticed
law.
the unusual
The
maintenance
shore
crew
patrol
3 months
officers
ago.
moved in,
The ones
their
who worked
faces
only
grim,
at night.
who
These were
avoided eye
sailors
contact,
arresting their admiral,
who moved
a
with too much
violation of
precision
everything
for
they'd
civilian
been taught
contractors.
about chain of
The
command
main
and
doors
loyalty.
burst open.
Stand down,
Colonel
Senior
Richards
Chief,
entered with 2
Brennan
MPs.
ordered.
Flashlights
This is bigger than
sweeping.
rank.
What's going on
Avery
here?
stepped back,
Why are the
rubbing
lights?
her wrist where the
The
admiral had
takedown was
grabbed
swift.
it. Red
Professional.
marks were already
Richards
forming,
hit the ground
but
hard.
She didn't
unconscious
react to the
before
pain.
he could finish
She
his
had endured
sentence.
worse in
The
ISA
MPs
training,
followed
learning to
seconds later.
operate in
Helen
environments
moved
where a
in the
woman's
darkness,
presence would
tearing
be
strips
questioned,
from the
where
hem
her
of her
janitor
janitor
uniform
uniform
with
through
practiced
pain.
efficiency.
The marshals
She
cuffed
knelt
Admiral
beside
Huxley
Richards
with the
her
same
hand
restraining
restraining
his
his
pulse
pulse
on
on
the
the
common
guard,
criminals.
applying pressure to
The sound of
points that
metal
would click
clicking
and
bleeding
close
from
from
where
where
his
his
head
head
had
struck
struck
like
the
a
floor.
judge's gavel.
How do you know medical
His dress
procedures?
whites,
Jake
so
whispered.
pristine
Lucky
moments
guess.
before,
Helen
were now
replied.
wrinkled
But her
from the
hands
struggle.
moved with
You're
the muscle
destroying
memory
decades
of
of
someone
work,
who had
he
done
said
this
to Avery.
hundreds of
The
times
relationships,
before.
the
sound of breach
operations,
charges
the
being
trust
placed
we've
on
built
doors
with indigenous
echoed
forces,
through the hall.
it'll all
Small
collapse
metallic
without me.
clicks that
The
Helen
seals
identified
existed before you,
immediately.
Admiral.
Semtex
They'll exist
Eastern
after
Bloc
you.
variety.
She picked up her challenge coin from his
delay
desk.
once triggered.
The difference
if
is,
this injustice
they'll
makes
exist
your
without
blood boil,
operators
if you
dying
believe
from
those who
preventable
serve in
equipment
shadows
failures.
deserve recognition,
The door opened again.
hit that like button
This time,
and subscribe.
40 members of SEAL
Don't
Team
forget to
6
tap the
entered in
thanks
full
button
operational
below
gear
to support
They had
more
been training on the
incredible true
compound's
stories
kill
of
house,
hidden heroes.
practicing close quarters
Outside,
combat when word
Captain
spread
Torres
through the
arrived with a
tactical
full
net
squad,
that the admiral
but the
was being
doors wouldn't
arrested.
budge.
These
They
would
had
be
been sealed
elite
from
of the
inside
elite.
with
Men who
industrial-grade
conducted
magnetic
operations
locks.
in every
Through the
shadow
reinforced
conflict of the
windows,
past
Torres
decade.
could see only
The lead
darkness and
operator,
the
a
occasional
lieutenant
sweep
with a
of
Purple
tactical
Heart ribbon on
flashlight.
his combat
Get me a
vest,
breaching
looked
team
between
Torres
the
barked
arrested
into his
admiral
radio
and Avery.
and someone find out
Master
why the
Chief,
backup
what's
power
the
isn't kicking
situation?
in.
Brennan
Inside,
straightened.
Helen guided
Lieutenant,
the 7 Marines
Admiral
through the
Huxley is
darkness
under
with
federal
uncanny
arrest for crimes
precision.
related to the
Her
training
hand found the
deaths.
electrical
Ms.
panel on the wall.
Lane is a
From
federal
pure memory.
investigator with full
fingers
authority.
tracing circuits she
The
shouldn't
lieutenant
know
studied
existed.
Avery carefully,
Kitchen freight elevator,
noting the
she
ISA
whispered.
tattoo
Old
still
model,
visible on her
still
forearm.
runs on analog
Recognition
backup
dawned
power.
in his eyes.
Kozlov wouldn't
You're
have thought to
Phoenix's
disable
daughter.
it.
Yes.
Kozlov?
The
Jake
lieutenant
asked.
did something
You know who this
unprecedented.
is?
He removed
Helen
his
didn't
helmet,
answer.
revealing
She
a
was
young
already
face
moving,
marked by
leading them
combat
through the
experience
darkness.
beyond his
Jake
years.
stumbled over a chair.
Then he saluted.
Helen's arm
Not
shot
the
out,
admiral,
catching
but
him with
Avery.
one hand. The grip
One
was
by one,
surprisingly strong,
the other SEALs
steady.
followed suit.
Maria Santos
40 of
whimpered
America's
as they
most
moved,
elite
but
warriors
Helen's
saluting
presence
a woman
seemed
in
to calm
civilian
her.
clothes,
A strange
while their
authority
admiral stood in
radiating from the old
handcuffs.
woman, even in
The
pitch
symbolism was
darkness.
powerful
Running
enough
to the
to
kitchen,
crack the foundations
Kozlov's
of
voice
military
taunted.
hierarchy.
I disabled that
Your
exit
father
first,
saved my
Phantom.
team in Helmand,
Just like
the
I
lieutenant
disabled the
said.
loading dock.
His intelligence
and the emergency
package prevented
exits.
us from
no one
walking
gets
into
in,
an ambush.
no one gets out.
We all came
Not
home
until
because
our
of him.
business is concluded.
Other voices joined in.
In the darkness,
He
Helen
identified the
smiled.
HVT.
It was the
in
expression
Ramadi.
no one could see.
Saved
but
dozens of
somehow
Marines.
Everyone felt it.
His work in
the temperature
Somalia
seemed
kept
to
my
drop
squad
several
alive.
degrees.
We
I'm
called
not
him the
running,
Oracle,
Victor.
she
He saw
said,
patterns
her
nobody
voice
else could
carrying
see.
across the hall
Avery's
with
composed
perfect
mask
acoustic
finally cracked
calculation.
slightly.
I'm hunting.
Moisture gathering in her green eyes.
The silence that followed
These men
was
had known a
profound.
side of her father
Kozlov
she'd
had
never
stopped
seen.
talking,
The
stopped
operator
moving.
who had lived
For the
in the
first
shadows
time
to
since the
keep
lights
others
went
in the
out,
light.
uncertainty
Admiral
crept
Huxley
into the
watched his
equation.
men's loyalty shift
Helen
in
tapped
real
something
time.
against a water
You're making
pipe.
a mistake.
3 short,
all of you.
3 long.
When the next
3
operation
short.
goes
Then a
sideways
complex
because the
pattern
equipment
that
I
Jake
didn't
recognized as
personally
Morse
vet
code
fails,
but couldn't
remember
decipher.
this moment.
Throughout the base,
equipment
in a
you
secure
personally
monitoring
vetted killed
station,
3
a
good
young
men.
intelligence
Master
officer's
Chief Brennan
eyes
replied.
widened as the
Men who
message
trusted
came
you
through.
to give them
Ghost
the best,
protocol
not
active,
the most profitable.
authentication.
The marshals
Amber
began
Star,
moving Huxley
3
toward the
hostile
door.
operators.
As they passed
priority,
it, each
Alpha.
SEAL stepped aside,
The intelligence
creating a
officer's
corridor
hands
of
shook
judgment.
as he picked up
None
a red
met his
phone
eye.
that hadn't been used
In the warrior
15
culture
years.
of the SEALs, there was
Sir,
no
we
greater
have a
dishonor
ghost
than
protocol
betraying your
activation.
brothers for money.
Authentication checks out.
Wait,
it's
Avery's voice stopped
Sir,
the procession.
it's Phantom 6.
She approached the Admiral,
back in the mess
studying seeing his
Derek
face,
Chen
but the
whispered
analytical
urgently,
detachment she'd
"That's
learned from
impossible.
her mother's
How can you
legal
know where
training
they are?
and her father's
We can't see
operational
anything."
planning. Helen's response
There's
was
something
to remove
else.
her janitor cap.
Someone else.
In the darkness,
Huxley's
the sound of
expression
fabric
flickered
tearing
for
was
just a
followed
moment,
by the
but she
soft
caught
thud
it.
of something hitting the
The tell
floor.
of a poker
When
player
Jake's
holding
phone light
cards
flickered
he
on
didn't
for just
want
a second,
revealed.
he caught a glimpse of gray
Who else
hair
is
on the
involved?
ground.
A
She
wig.
asked quietly.
Underneath,
so
Helen's
only he
real
could hear,
hair
was shorter,
Flex Tech
darker,
isn't big enough
pulled
to
back
run this
in a severe
operation
style
alone.
that spoke of
Who's
military
protecting you?
precision.
His
Two
lips
coming from the
quirked in
left,
what might have been
Helen said
admiration.
calmly.
You're
One
good,
from the
Lane.
right.
Your
The
father
left
would be
pair will
proud.
use flashbangs.
But some secrets die
Cover
with
your
their keeper.
ears and close your
We'll see
eyes
about
in
that.
3,
She nodded
2,
to the marshals.
1.
Take him.
The
As
explosion
they let
of
him
light
out,
and sound
she heard
was
him muttering
overwhelming,
about
but
national
Helen had
security,
already
about
positioned
threats
everyone
only he
behind
understood.
stood.
Their faces
about the
turned
price
away,
of keeping
ears
America
protected.
safe.
The
In that brief
self-justification
moment
of
of
a man
illumination,
who had
they
lost his
saw her
moral
clearly
compass
so
for the first
gradually.
time.
The
He
elderly
never
stoop
noticed
was
when
gone.
north became
The
south.
trembling hands were
Lieutenant
steady.
Commander
The
Torres
frail
approached her,
grandmother had
pulling
been
out the
replaced by
USB
something
drive
else
from his
entirely.
pocket.
She
This
moved
contained
like
6
liquid
months
shadow.
of
A
documentation,
mop handle in her hand,
every
snapped
meeting,
in half,
every phone
with a
call,
precise strike
every
against
order
the
that
wall
violated
edge, creating
protocol.
two
I'm sorry
perfectly
I
weighted
couldn't act
batons.
sooner, but
The first operator entered to ensure night vision goggles glowing
She took the
green
drive,
in the darkness.
weighing its small mass
Helen
against
struck
the
with
lives
surgical
it represented.
precision. Not at
You
his
did the
head,
right thing,
body where
Commander.
armor protected.
It doesn't
but at
feel
specific
like it.
nerve
He looked
clusters
around
in his
the office
exposed
where he had
wrists
served
and
for
neck.
2 years.
The
Watching
operator
corruption
dropped
spread
silently.
like cancer
You starting
through
to
the
notice
command.
something unusual
I betrayed
about
my
Helen?
commanding officer.
Something that doesn't
No.
quite add up?
Master Chief Brennan
Comment
corrected.
below if you're
The
catching
Admiral
the clues.
betrayed us.
Maria
You
Santos
upheld your
felt the
oath
operator's
to the
weapon,
Constitution.
reaching for it
The
instinctively.
seals began filing
Helen's
out,
hand stopped
but
her
several
immediately.
stopped to shake
Don't.
Avery's hand.
The safety's
or
been
offer
welded.
quiet
It's a
thanks.
trap weapon.
Each handshake
Touch
was
the trigger
firm,
and the magazine
respectful.
explodes.
The acknowledgement of
How could you
warriors
possibly know
recognizing
that?
another warrior,
Maria gasped.
regardless of uniform
Helen didn't
or
answer.
gender.
She was
When
already
the office
moving,
finally
dragging
emptied
the
except for
unconscious
Avery,
operator
Brennan,
into a
Torres,
supply
the Master
closet
Chief
with
spoke
strength
again.
that shouldn't exist
Ma'am,
in her.
there's something else you
seemingly
should
aged
know.
frame.
Your
The second
father's last
operator
mission,
tried to flank
the one
them,
where he
but Helen
died,
had anticipated.
Admiral Huxley was
She'd
the one who
positioned everyone
insisted on using
specifically to
flex-tech
funnel the
radios
attacker
despite
into a
field
narrow
reports of
corridor
problems.
between tables.
The weight of
When
that
he appeared,
revelation
she was
settled over
already
Avery
there,
like a
having
burial
moved
shroud.
silently around
Her
the entire
investigation
group.
had been about
The
justice
encounter
for the
lasted
recent
less than
victims,
2 seconds.
but now she understood
The
she'd
operator
also been
went down
seeking
with a
answers
confused
about her
expression.
father's death.
His
without
nervous
realizing
system
it.
temporarily shut
Did
down
he know
by strikes
she
to
asked
pressure
quietly.
points that few people
Did my
in the
father
world
know
knew
about the
existed.
Admiral's corruption?
Outside,
Sergeant
Sergeant
Mills
Mills
had
had
arrived
arrived
with
with from his
reinforcements.
pocket. He was a 20-year
gave me this
veteran
2
who'd
days
served in
before that
Bosnia,
last mission.
Afghanistan,
Told me
and
if
Iraq.
anything happened
As he
to make
watched
sure
through
it
the
got to
window,
the right
observing
people.
the tactical
I've been
movements
carrying it for
illuminated
11
by
years,
sporadic
not knowing who
flashlight
the right
beams.
people
Something
were.
nagged at his
She opened the
memory.
notebook.
That
Her
movement
father's
pattern,
precise
he
handwriting
muttered to
filled
Captain
pages
Torres.
with
I've
observations,
seen it before.
connections,
Bosnia,
patterns that painted a
95.
picture of
There were
systematic
rumors about a
corruption.
ghost unit.
The
Night
last entry was
reconnaissance
dated the day
specialists
before
who could
his death.
operate in complete
If
darkness.
you're reading this,
They
it
said
means
the
that
unit
didn't make it
commander
back.
was the
But
equipment
no,
failures
that's
aren't
impossible.
accidents. What's impossible?
Follow the money,
Torres demanded.
Trust no
Phantom
one above
6.
05.
But that whole unit
Phoenix.
died in Operation Amber
05
Star.
was the naval
All
rank of
6
commander.
operators.
Admiral
the
Huxley
military
was 09.
confirmed it.
Her father
Inside
had known.
Kozlov's
He
frustration
was investigating
growing
from the
audible.
inside.
Enough games.
Torres added.
You think
I
you
found
found references
all
in old
Phantom?
files?
You're
He'd been
older
building
now.
a case for
Slower.
2 years.
And you're alone.
And they killed him
Helen
for it.
guided the Marines to
Avery's
the kitchen.
voice was
her
steady,
hand trailing
but her
along
knuckles
the
were
wall
white as she
reading
gripped
the
the
building
notebook.
like Braille.
We can't
She
prove
stopped
that,
suddenly.
Brennan said
sniffing the
gently.
air.
Gas
the
leak.
Taliban did ambush
He's ruptured the
team.
main line.
The
4
Taliban
minutes
were
until
just
the
the weapon.
concentration reaches
Huxley aimed
combustible
it by
levels.
ensuring the radios
He's trying
would
to
fail.
blow us up.
She looked out
Jake's
the window
voice pitched
where the
higher with
Pacific
panic.
stretched endlessly.
No. He's
My
creating
mother
a
knew.
secondary threat
That's why
to
she
force
kept
us into
pushing
the
for
open.
investigations
Standard
until she had her
tactic.
heart attack.
Page
5
47
years
of their
ago.
urban warfare
The room
manual,
fell silent.
if memory
The
serves.
implications were
Derek
staggering.
Chen stared
A
at her in the
decade-long
darkness.
conspiracy that had
Who
killed
are you?
operators and civilians
Right now,
alike.
I'm the
All
person
for
keeping
profit
you alive.
margins on defense
Follow
contracts.
Me. The walk-in
Avery's
freezer
phone
is
buzzed.
reinforced
A
and
text from the
airtight.
U.S. attorney.
We can wait out the
Huxley
gas there.
secured. Request
Why
your
should we
presence
trust
for
you?
debrief.
Jake demanded.
Additional
His
arrests
earlier
pending
arrogance
based on your
replaced with
evidence.
desperate confusion.
She turned to the
Helen's
two men.
voice was soft.
This isn't
but
over.
carried absolute
FlexTech has
certainty.
contracts with other
Because,
units.
young man,
Army
you're still
Special
breathing.
Forces.
If I
Marine
wanted you
Raiders,
dead,
you would
Air
have been
Force
dead
pararescue
17 minutes ago.
How many more have
Security
died because
footage
of
from the
substandard
previous week
equipment?
was being
Too
reviewed
many,
frantically
Torres
in the
admitted.
base's command
I've
center.
identified at least
There was
30
Helen,
suspicious
meeting with a
incidents
man
across
outside
all
the mess
branches.
hall.
Then
The
we keep
image was
going.
grainy.
She
but the man
pocketed her
appeared to be
father's notebook.
passing her something.
Commander Torres,
Money,
I'm requesting you be
documents.
assigned to the Joint
Sir,
Task
a
Force.
technician called out.
Your inside
We've got a
knowledge is
problem.
invaluable.
Helen Carter,
Ma'am, I'm still
she
active
died in
duty.
2010.
I can't just
car
You
accident
can
in
if the
Phoenix.
Secretary of the Navy
Whoever this
approves
is,
it.
she's using
She
a
showed him
stolen
her phone
identity.
where an email confirmed
Kozlov's
his
voice
temporary
echoed through the
assignment to
mess
the
hall
Department
again,
of Justice.
triumphant.
I may
They're
not
starting
have
to figure it
military
out,
rank,
aren't they,
Admiral
Phantom?
Huxley?
Your
But I
handler
have
sold
something
you
better.
out. Told
I
us
have
exactly
federal
where to
authority
find you.
and a president
How much
who's
did
very
Moscow
interested
pay
in
you to
why
disappear
American
all those
special
years ago?
operators
How
keep
much to
dying
betray
from
your
equipment
country?
failures?
Helen's
Master
Smart
Chief
Watch,
Brennan stood
a
at
tactical
attention.
model with
Ma'am,
night vision
I request
capabilities
permission to
and
assist
military
the
grade heart
investigation.
rate monitoring.
Master
that
Chief,
could run for
you don't
7
need my
days on a
permission.
single charge.
With respect,
Glowed
ma'am,
softly
I
in the
do.
darkness.
You're the
She
mission
checked it
commander
once,
now.
then
This is your
continued
operation.
moving.
40
weight of
degrees
that
left,
responsibility
8 meters
settled
forward,
on her shoulders.
she instructed
She
the
thought
group.
of
of her father.
Mind the
spending
overturned
years
table at
gathering
your 2
evidence while
o'clock.
maintaining his
They
cover.
moved through the darkness
her mother
like a strange
filing legal
parade.
briefs,
Helen
and court
leading with
documents
absolute
until her
confidence,
heart
while
gave out
7
from the
Marines
stress.
stumbled behind
They'd
her,
both died
entirely
pursuing the
dependent
truth.
on her guidance.
Very well, Master
The third
Chief.
operator had been
Consider
waiting,
yourself
patient,
attached to the task
professional.
force.
He'd studied the layout.
She looked around
knew
the
they'd have
Admiral's
to pass
office
through
one
this
last
choke
time.
point.
But
Awards,
Helen knew too.
photographs,
She'd felt the
certificates
air
of
displacement
achievement
from his breathing,
covering the
heard
walls,
the subtle shift of
the
weight
visible
on the
record of a
floorboards that
decorated
indicated
career
someone
that
that
had
had
rotted
rotted
from the
firing position
inside.
for extended
They left the
periods.
office together.
The kitchen knife
walking
left
through
her hand in a
corridors
fluid
now filled
motion,
with sailors
sailing
and
through the
SEALs,
darkness
trying
with
to process
impossible
what they
precision.
witnessed.
It struck
An
exactly
Admiral
where she
rested,
intended.
the command
pinning the
structure
operator's
shattered,
sleeve to the
everything
wooden
they'd
doorframe,
believed about loyalty and
immobilizing his
leadership
trigger hand without
challenged.
causing serious
As they
injury.
reached the building's
Warning
exit,
shot.
Avery
She
saw
said
them.
simply.
40
The
SEALs
next
in
one won't
formation,
miss.
standing
The
at
walk-in
attention in
freezer door opened with a pneumatic
same men who'd
hiss.
saluted her in
Helen
the
ushered
office had
everyone
organized
inside,
a formal
then paused
honor
at the
guard.
threshold.
As she emerged,
Thermal
the ranking
differential will hide
NCO
our
called
heat
out
signatures for
present
approximately
arms.
6 minutes.
40 rifles
After that,
snapped to the present
his
arms
infrared will
position
pick us
in
up.
perfect
Then
synchronization.
what?
Maria
They weren't
asked.
saluting her
earlier
federal
authority
authority
replaced
or her
with raw
investigation.
They
Then
were
we
saluting
stop hiding
Phoenix's daughter,
and start hunting.
acknowledging a
Jake
debt
watched
owed
her in
to
the
a
dim
fallen brother.
emergency lighting of the
Avery
freezer.
stopped,
The way
returning
she
the salute
stood,
with
the
civility
way she
and precision.
moved,
Her father
everything
had
had
taught her.
changed.
Then she did
The
something
grandmother
unexpected.
facade had completely
She pulled
fallen
out his
away.
challenge coin and
You're
held
not
it
really
high,
a janitor,
sunlight
are you?
catching the metal.
Helen turned to him.
Your brotherhood
And in
isn't
the cold
broken.
light,
She
could
could
see
see
her
her
eyes
eyes, her
clearly
voice
for the
carrying
first time.
across the courtyard.
They were the eyes of
One
someone who had
corrupt
seen
leader
too
doesn't
much,
define
done
you.
too much,
You are still the tip
lost
of the
too
spear,
much.
still
I've
the
been a
ones who
janitor
go
for
where
15
others
years,
can't.
Mr.
My
Morrison.
father believed in
Before
what
that,
you represent.
before
So
that,
do I.
I was something else.
Hoo-yah!
Morrison.
The response
She
was
repeated
thunderous.
his name
40
slowly.
voices
Your
united in
grandmother's
the seal
maiden
battle
name was
cry.
Morrison, wasn't
As
it?
the formation
Sarah
dispersed,
Morrison from
individual
Oklahoma?
seals approached.
Jake nodded,
Each
confused.
had a story about
How did
her
you know
father,
that?
a mission
Your
where his
grandfather,
intelligence had made
Staff
the
Sergeant
difference.
Timothy
A
Morrison,
moment when Phoenix had
served
appeared
with
from
distinction
nowhere
in the
with
75th
exactly the
Rangers
information
before
they
transferring
needed.
to a
He saved
classified
my
unit in
platoon in
93.
Fallujah.
Helen's
His
voice
intel
grew
package
distant.
in Yemen
He was a good
perfect.
man.
The
I
best
wouldn't have made it
spotter I
home
ever
without
worked
his
with.
Overwatch.
You knew my
By the
grandfather?
time she reached her car,
Knew him?
Avery had heard 20
Helen's laugh
stories
was
of her
bitter.
father's shadow
He saved
work.
my life 4
The man
times
she'd
in
known as a
Bosnia.
loving,
I
if
managed
often
to return
absent
the favor
father,
twice.
had been a guardian
We called
angel
it
to
even.
hundreds of
The
operators.
freezer door suddenly
working in
buckled
darkness
as
to
something
keep them in
heavy
the light.
slammed against
The
it from
federal
outside.
vehicles were waiting.
Kozlov's
Engines
voice
running.
was closer
The
now.
U.S.
More
Marshal in
personal.
charge.
You
a former
killed 12
Marine
of my
named
men in
Rodriguez
Bosnia,
nodded
Phantom.
respectfully.
Good men.
Ma'am, we
Patriots
have
who
Admiral
believed in
Huxley
something
secured.
greater. He's
Patriots.
requesting his lawyer.
Helen's voice
He'll
turned
need
to
a good
ice.
one.
They
She
were
looked
trafficking
back at the
children,
base,
Victor,
where normal
7 to
operations
12
were
years
slowly
old,
resuming,
sold to the
despite the
highest
morning's
bidder.
earthquake.
Your
We have enough
patriots were
evidence
monsters.
to bury him in flex.
They were
tech.
soldiers
If you've ever
following
witnessed
orders.
military justice,
They were predators.
Share your story
And I put them
below.
down like the
we read
rabid
every
dogs
comment
they
about
were.
accountability.
Outside the freezer,
Rodriguez
the gas
looked
concentration was
Ma'am,
rising.
there's something
Through
else.
the small window,
We've
Helen
received
could see
word that
Kozlov
several
himself
FlexTech
now.
board members
Victor
are
Kozlov,
attempting to leave the
former
country.
Spetsnaz,
Private
current
jets filed
mercenary,
for international
and the ghost from her
destinations.
past. She'd hoped
Ground them
never
all.
to face again.
She pulled out her
He
phone.
was older too,
Speed dialing
scarred,
Federal
but
Aviation
still lethal.
Administration.
Tell me, Phantom,
This is Special
Kozlov
Investigator
called
Lane.
out.
Do they know
Authorization
about the
code
massacre?
77
Do they
Alpha
know what
Niner.
you did to that
I need
village?
immediate ground stops
Helen's
on a list
jaw
of
tightened.
aircraft.
That
As she
wasn't a
coordinated
village.
with federal
It was a
agencies,
processing
Master
center.
Chief Brennan
43
and Lieutenant
Track
Commander
Commander
Torres
Zero
stood guard,
civilians.
unconsciously
The records say
falling into
otherwise.
protective positions.
The records were altered by
They'd
people
become
who
her team
profited
without
from the
formal
trade.
assignment.
People
drawn
in
by
both our
respect for her
governments who
father's
needed
memory
the truth buried
and
along with
recognition
my
of her
team.
mission's importance.
Derek Chen was typing frantically
Ma'am,
on his phone,
Torres said
which
quietly,
had suddenly regained signal.
There's someone else you
I'm
should know
finding
about.
something.
Captain Sarah
Classified
Mitchell,
files are
the
being
Admiral's
accessed
niece.
remotely.
She commands a
Someone with
destroyer in the
Pentagon
Persian
clearance
Gulf.
is pulling
She's
everything
been
about
refusing
Operation
FlexTech
Amber
equipment
Star.
for her ship.
On his screen,
citing
fragments of
compatibility
documents
issues.
appeared.
Photos
I think
from
she knew something was
1995,
wrong, but
six
couldn't act
operators
without
in
proof.
night combat gear.
Contact her.
Faces obscured
Avery
by
made another
tactical
note in her
masks.
phone.
But
If she's
one
been
figure
protecting
stood
her
out.
sailors by
Smaller,
refusing bad
slighter,
equipment,
but
she's an
positioned at the
ally.
center.
The
team
morning
leader.
had progressed to
The
afternoon.
images were labeled
San Diego
Ghost
Sun
Team
beating
6,
down on the base
Operation
with
Amber
subtropical
Star,
intensity.
status,
The Pacific
KIA.
Ocean sparkled deceptively
Killed in action,
calm,
Derek
hiding
read.
currents that
All
could
6
drag the
operators
unwary to
confirmed
their
dead.
deaths. Bodies
Much
were
like the
covered
military
and
industrial
identified.
complex
He
that
looked up at
generated
Helen.
billions
But
in contracts,
you're here, while occasionally
5 bodies were
sacrificing
recovered,
those it claimed
Helen
to protect.
corrected.
5
Avery's
members
phone
of my
rang.
team.
The caller
The
ID
6th
showed a
body
block
they
number,
claimed was mine,
but the
belonged
encryption
to one of the
signature indicated
traffickers.
a secure
Similar
government
height,
line.
build, lane.
The DNA
She
test was
answered.
faked by
Ms.
someone
Lane,
very high
this is the
up
Secretary
who wanted
of
me to
Defense.
disappear.
Why?
The voice was familiar
Because
from
I knew
countless
too
press
much.
conferences.
Because I'd refused
I've been
certain
briefed on your
orders.
operation.
Because dead heroes can't
Outstanding
testify
work.
before congressional
Sir,
committees.
This is
The
just
gas
the
leak had
beginning.
been contained by
The corruption
emergency
goes
systems,
deeper than
but
one
Kozlov
admiral.
wasn't
I know.
finished. Through
That's
the
why I'm
freezer
giving you
window,
carte
they
blanche.
could see him setting
Full
up something new.
resources,
Helen
any
recognized
personnel
it
you need,
immediately.
complete
A portable
authority
thermal
to
lance,
investigate every
military
defense contractor
could cut
working
through
with
the freezer
special
door in
operations.
minutes.
We need to move.
That's hundreds
she
of
said.
companies.
Now,
Thousands of contracts.
Move where? Jake demanded.
Then you'd better get
He's
started.
got us trapped.
The president wants
Helen
this
looked
cleaned
at him
up before
steadily.
any more
Your grandfather
operators
once
die
asked me
from
the same
preventable
question.
failures.
We were pinned
The
down by
line went
32
dead.
hostiles
Avery
in
stood
a bombed-out
holding the phone,
school in
feeling
Sarajevo.
the weight of the assignment.
No backup,
David
no
versus
extraction,
Goliath.
If
No
Goliath
hope.
was a multi-billion
What did you
dollar
do?
industry,
I
with
told him the
tentacles
truth.
in every
When you
branch
can't
of
run
government,
and you can't hide,
ma'am,
there's only
Brennan
one option
asked,
left.
reading her expression.
She paused.
We're
Checking
going
her watch
to war,
again.
Master Chief.
You become
Not with
the
rifles
nightmare
and
they
grenades,
whisper about
but
in
with
the dark.
subpoenas and
She
indictments.
moved to the back
She
of the
looked at
freezer,
both men,
running her hands
Are you
along
in?
the wall until she
Hoo-yah,
found what she was
Brennan
looking
replied
for.
without
A
hesitation.
maintenance panel.
Yes,
painted
ma'am,
over, Torres
forgotten.
added. Then with a small
Inside was the
smile.
freezer's original
Though I should
ventilation
warn you,
system.
the
from
last
before
time
the
someone took
renovation
on
5
this
years
much of the
ago.
defense industry,
The ductwork was
they
narrow,
ended up like your
cramped,
parents.
but possible.
The words hung
This
in the
leads
air
to the
like
loading
smoke
dock,
from a distant
she said.
fire.
It's
The
a straight
threat was
crawl,
real.
30
had already
meters.
claimed her
At the
family.
end, there's a
But
drop
standing
into the
there in the
storage room.
afternoon sun,
2 meters,
surrounded
surrounded by
controlled
warriors
fall.
who had chosen
You want us to
justice
crawl
over
through
comfort.
there?
Maria
Avery
looked
felt her
horrified.
father's presence
I
like a
want you to
hand on her
survive.
shoulder.
Then
This is
we'd
how
better
you
make sure we
survive.
win. One by
She
one,
walked
she
toward
helped
the
them
federal
into the
vehicles,
vehicles, giving
her
each
team
precise
following
instructions
instructions
on
on
navigation.
A Master Chief,
Jake was the
I need a
last
list
to go.
of every
As he
operator
climbed
killed
in, he
with
turned
FlexTech
back.
equipment
What
in the
about
last
you?
decade.
I'll be right
Commander
behind
Torres,
you. Helen
compile
lied
all
smoothly.
financial records
Jake
linking Admiral
hesitated.
Huxley to
That's
defense
not true, is it?
contractors. We're
Helen
going to follow
smiled,
my father's
and for
advice.
a moment, she looked
Follow
like
the
a
money.
grandmother again.
As they drove through the
Your
base
grandfather
gate,
was
Avery
smarter
saw
than
Admiral
you.
Huxley in the
He
back
would have
of
already
another
been
federal
halfway
vehicle.
through that vent
Their
by
eyes
now.
met through the bulletproof
He would have
glass.
stayed to help you.
He mouthed something that
No.
might have been a
He
threat
would have
or a
followed
promise.
orders.
Because
She
he understood
responded by
that
holding up her
sometimes
father's challenge
one person
coin,
has to
letting
hold
him
the
see the
line
Operation
so others
Neptune
can live.
Spear serial
Go
number.
now.
The message was clear.
That's an order,
The
Marine.
mission wasn't over.
Jake crawled into the vent.
The convoy
and Helen
turned
sealed
north
it behind
toward
him.
the federal
Then she turned to
building
face the
downtown
freezer
where
door.
Huxley would
Just
be
as the thermal
processed.
lance burst
Behind
through.
them,
the
metal
metal
blazed
glowed orange,
Coronado
then
continued
white,
its daily
then began to
routine of
part like
creating
curtains.
warriors.
Through the growing
But
gap, she could
something
see Kozlov's
fundamental had
face,
changed.
scarred
The
and
SEALs
older,
had seen
but
one of
still
their
carrying
own,
the
their
same
highest-ranking
cruel
officer,
intelligence
she remembered.
brought down by a
Alone
woman
at
with
last,
no
Phantom,
military
he
rank,
said in
but
Russian.
unshakable
Not
moral
quite,
authority.
Helen replied in
In the
same
days that would
language.
follow,
You
the
forgot
story
about
would
the
spread
ghosts.
through the special
Ghosts?
operations community.
The ones
like
who have been
wildfire.
watching you for the last
Phoenix's
3
daughter
months.
had returned
Did
to
you
finish
really
what her
think you were
father
the only
started.
one
The
planning
corrupt
this
would be
reunion?
exposed, the
Doubt
guilty
flickered
punished,
across
and the
Kozlov's
fallen
face.
honored with the truth
Helen
about
used that
how they
moment of
died.
uncertainty,
But
that
that
was
freezer
still to
had
come.
one feature Kozlov
For now,
hadn't
Avery
considered.
Lane sat
Emergency
in the back of a federal
CO2
vehicle,
fire
reading her
suppression.
father's notebook.
She triggered it
planning her
manually,
next
flooding
move in
the
a
area
war
with
with
dense
enemies
white
wore
gas
suits
instead of
uniforms.
uniforms, and killed
In that
with
chaos,
contracts
she
instead of
moved.
bullets.
Mills,
The
watching
Admiral's
from
office
outside,
had been her
saw it
D-Day,
happen through the
establishing
window.
a beachhead
One
in
moment,
enemy territory.
there was only white
now
gas
came
and
the long
confusion.
campaign to
The
root
next,
out every corrupt
Kozlov was on the
contractor,
ground,
every
Helen
complicit
standing over
officer,
him,
his
every
own weapon in her
bureaucrat
hands.
who'd chosen profit
Pentagon's
over
on the
patriots.
line. Torres
Her phone
shouted.
buzzed.
They're
Another
asking
text.
about Phantom
This one
6.
from an unknown
They want
number.
confirmation
Your mother
of
was right.
identity.
The truth will
Tell
set us
them
free.
A
Mills
friend
started,
from the inside,
then stopped.
She studied the message
Through the
weighing
window,
its
in a
authenticity.
brief clearing of the gas.
In the
He
intelligence
saw
world,
Helen's
friends
torn
and
shirt.
enemies often wore the same
Saw
faces,
what was underneath.
separated only by circumstance
Mother of God,
and motivation.
tell them confirmed.
Master Chief, Phantom
She
6
said
is
quietly.
alive. What do you
The
know
tattoo
about
was
psychological
elaborate, beautiful,
operations
and
within
terrible.
the defense
It
contracting
covered most
world?
of her left shoulder
Brennan's
and upper
expression
back.
darkened.
Ghost
Enough to
recon
know that
in
Admiral
Gothic
Huxley
letters
wasn't
curved
working
above a
alone.
detailed
There's a
skull
whole network,
wearing a special
man.
operations
They call
beret.
themselves the Brotherhood.
Below it,
but they're not about
Operation
protecting
Amber Star.
operators.
And
They're about
coordinates.
protecting profits.
44.8.
Then the Brotherhood is about to
degrees
meet its
north.
match. She pulled out a fresh
15.8
beginning her own
east.
documentation. The exact location.
We're going
in
to map
Bosnia
their entire
where 5
network,
members of
from
Ghost
the
Team
Pentagon
6
to the
had died.
production floors.
3 Purple Hearts were
The federal
etched into
building
the
loomed
design,
ahead,
along with
20
a silver
stories of
star
glass
and a
and
distinguished
steel
service
housing the
cross.
machinery
But
of
it was the
justice.
number that made Mills'
Somewhere
blood
inside,
run cold.
Admiral
Simple
Huxley
6
was about to
incorporated
learn that
into
his
the
rank
skull's
meant
design,
nothing in
not
federal
sixth
custody.
member.
He'd be
not
processed
Team 6
like any
other
other
suspect.
suspect.
The legendary
Fingerprinted,
commander of the
photographed,
most elite
and
night
placed in a
operations
holding
unit in
cell
U.S.
to await arraignment.
military history. As they pulled
Jake and
into
the
the
others
secure
had made it
garage,
through the vent,
U.S.
and were
Marshal
stumbling out of the
Rodriguez
storage
turned to
room
Avery
when they heard the
Ma'am,
commotion.
there's been a
Emergency
development.
lights were flickering
3
back
more
on
defense
throughout the
contractors
base.
have
The
contacted
backup
the
power
US.
had finally been
Attorney's
restored,
office, probably by
Helen's
Helen's
ghost
in
protocol
exchange for
activation.
testimony. They ran
They're
back
scared,
toward the mess
Torres
hall,
observed.
arriving just
Huxley's
as the doors
arrest
were being
sent
forced
shockwaves
open
through the
by
industry.
base security. Good.
Inside,
Avery gathered
they could
her
see
files.
Helen standing
Fear
calmly
makes
in the
people
center
honest.
of the chaos.
Let them all come
Kozlov
forward.
was on his
Every
knees,
testimony
hands
builds their
tied
case.
behind his back.
They entered
His
through
two conscious
secure
operators
entrance,
were
avoiding the
similarly
media
restrained.
that had already gathered.
The third
main
was still
doors.
unconscious, but
News of a
breathing
Navy
steadily.
admiral's arrest.
Colonel
had broken
Richards
on
was
social
sitting
media,
up,
holding
posted
his
by
head,
someone
but
who had
alert.
witnessed the arrest
He
at
took one
Coronado.
look at Helen, saw the
video
tattoo
was grainy,
through her
but
torn
clear
shirt,
enough,
and struggled
Federal
to his
agents
feet.
leading a flag
even
officer
injured,
away
even
in handcuffs.
confused, military
The
protocol
U.S.
took
attorney,
over.
Jennifer
He
Walsh,
snapped to attention,
met them
and
in a
saluted.
conference room overlooking
Colonel
the
Richards,
harbor.
Camp Pendleton
She was
Security,
45,
he said
with the
formally.
sharp features
It's
of
an
someone
honor,
who had
ma'am,
spent
an
20 years
absolute
prosecuting federal
Helen
cases
didn't return
and
the
won
salute.
most of them.
She couldn't.
Ms. Lane,
She wasn't in uniform.
outstanding work.
She wasn't officially
We have enough to
military
hold Huxley
anymore,
without bail,
but she nodded with the
He's a flight
gravity of
risk
someone
with
who
resources and
understood the weight
connections
of the gesture.
worldwide. What about
The honor was
FlexTech?
mine, Colonel.
FBI is
15
raiding
years
their
ago,
offices as
I
we
swore
speak.
I was done with
SEC
this life.
is freezing
But some
assets.
oaths run deeper than
IRS
retirement.
is beginning
Jake
forensic
pushed through the
accounting.
crowd of Marines that
Walsh
was forming.
smiled coldly.
His face was streaked
It's a
with
beautiful
tears.
thing when
Ma'am,
federal agencies cooperate.
What I did earlier,
Avery spread her father's notebook
I didn't
on
know.
the table. This is just
I'm
the
so
beginning.
sorry.
My father
Helen looked
identified
at him
17
with those gray
companies
eyes, and it
involved
seemed
in
too much.
systematic fraud.
You couldn't have known.
FlexTech
I
was
made
the
sure
biggest,
of that.
but not
I've
the
been
only
Helen
one.
Carter, janitor,
Walsh studied
for
the
15
pages,
years.
her expression growing
Before that,
grimmer with
I was
each
Lieutenant
revelation.
Colonel Helen Morrison.
This suggests
commander of
conspiracy
Ghost
at the
Team
highest
6.
levels.
And before
Joint
that,
Chiefs, Congressional
she
Armed
paused.
Services Committee,
Before that,
senior Pentagon
I was just a young
officials.
woman who believed
Yes,
she could make a
Avery
difference
met
in
her
the
gaze
dark
steadily.
places of the
Are
world.
you prepared for that fight?
Morrison?
Are you?
Jake's voice
Walsh
cracked.
countered. Taking on Admiral Huxley
you have
was
the
one
same
thing.
name as my
He was
grandfather.
a single bad actor.
No,
relatively
son.
speaking.
Your grandfather
But
took his
this,
wife's
she
name when
gestured
they
at the
married.
notebook, said
This is
Morrison
war
was
against
against
the
the
entire
entire
military-industrial
He was honoring
complex.
his promise to me.
These people have
to make sure the
unlimited
Morrison
resources
name
and
lived
no
on
moral
after I was
boundaries.
supposedly dead.
Your parents already paid the
Maria
price
Santos
for
stood
challenging them.
frozen. Her
Which is
earlier
exactly
cruelty
why I have to
transformed
finish
into
what
awe.
they started.
The stories
Avery's
about
voice
women in
carried the
special
quiet
operations
determination of someone who
they
had already
started
counted
with
the
you.
cost.
You were the
Every day
first.
we delay,
not the
more
first,
operators
Helen
die
corrected.
using defective
Just the first they
equipment.
couldn't classify
More
out of
families get
existence.
folded flags
My
and
team's
lies
work
about
in
training
Bosnia
accidents.
saved 300
Master
children
Chief
from
Brennan
trafficking
spoke up.
rings.
Ma'am,
The
with
military
respect
wanted
to the
to
U.S.
bury it
attorney,
because it
the
implicated
special
several
operations
high-ranking
community is
officials
behind
in
this
trade.
investigation. They gave me a choice.
We've lost too many brothers
Die
to
a hero
preventable failures.
or live as nobody.
Give us targets,
and
we'll
you
provide
chose to disappear.
intelligence.
Carefully,
I chose to
Master
survive.
Chief. Walsh
And to
warned.
keep my promise
Military
to 5 good
personnel
soldiers
conducting
who didn't
civilian
make it home.
investigations.
I told
could
their families I'd
compromise
live for all
prosecutions.
6 of us.
Not
Derek Chen
investigations.
was still on his
Brennan
phone,
clarified,
pulling up more declassified
information
documents.
SEALs
This is
talk to
incredible.
Rangers who talk
You
to
have the
Delta,
highest
who talk to
confirmed kill
PJs.
count in night
We all
operations
know which
history.
equipment fails,
73
which
confirmed in
contractors
Bosnia
deliver
alone.
substandard gear,
Helen's
which
expression
officers
darkened.
look the other way.
Every one of them was
that
trying
tribal
to hurt
knowledge
children.
should guide your
I
investigation.
don't celebrate those numbers,
Torres
Mr.
added.
Chen.
I've been
I carried
documenting
them.
problems for
Captain
6
Torres
months,
stepped forward.
but other officers
Ma'am,
have been
I
doing
need
it
to
longer.
ask, is the threat
There's an
contained?
underground network
Helen
of
looked at
military
Kozlov,
personnel
who was
trying
glaring
to
at
protect
her
their
with
troops
undimmed
from bad
hatred.
equipment. This threat
They
is,
just haven't had
but
anyone
Victor
to
here
report
was
to
just the first wave.
who wouldn't bury
He
their
mentioned
concerns.
Moscow paid someone.
Avery felt the
There's a
shape of
larger
something
operation
larger
in play.
forming.
Not just
Hydra,
an investigation,
Kozlov
but a
spat
movement.
suddenly.
Warriors
You think you've
tired of
won,
being
Phantom?
betrayed by those meant to
Hydra has
protect them,
47
ready to
assets
fight back
embedded
with
in
truth
military
instead of
bases
violence
across the country.
Set up a secure
This was
tip
just to
line,
confirm
she told
you were
Walsh.
alive.
Anonymous
To draw you
submissions,
out.
encrypted
Then you failed,
communications,
Helen said simply.
whistleblower protections.
I'm not the same operative
Let
I
every
was
service
28
member
years
know
ago.
they can report
I'm just an
equipment
old woman
failures
who
without
cleans floors.
retribution.
That'll
Kozlov
generate
laughed
thousands
bitterly.
of reports.
You just took down
Good.
3
Data
Spetsnaz
points
trained
create
operators
patterns.
in complete
Patterns
darkness.
reveal conspiracies.
I got lucky. She turned to
Lucky?
Torres. Mills had
Commander,
entered the
can
mess
you
hall
identify
now, his eyes
trustworthy
wide with
officers in
recognition
each
and
branch
respect.
who could serve as focal
Ma'am,
points?
what you did tonight?
Yes, ma'am.
That wasn't luck.
I know at
that
least
was
a
a dozen
dozen
who've
who've
been
been
fighting this
the
fight in
acoustic
shadows.
shadows.
The pressure
Walsh's
point
phone
strikes,
rang.
the predictive
She answered,
movement patterns.
listened, then
I
handed
studied
it
your
to
tactics
Avery.
in intelligence
It's for you.
school.
Secretary
More
of
Marines
Defense.
were flooding in now.
Ms. Lane,
Word had
I'm
spread
watching
across
Admiral
the base
Huxley's
faster than
interrogation
wildfire.
via a secure feed.
Phantom 6 was alive.
He's mentioned something
the
called
legend was
Prometheus,
real, and she'd
ringing
been
in
cleaning their
bells.
mess hall for
Avery's
15
blood
years.
chilled.
She'd
Helen
seen that
looked
word in her
uncomfortable
father's
with the
notebook,
attention,
but hadn't
she moved
understood
toward
its
the door,
significance.
but stopped.
No,
When she
sir.
heard the distinctive
What's the
sound of
context?
helicopters
He
approaching.
says Prometheus
Not just
is
any
why he can't
helicopters.
be prosecuted.
The twin rotor beat
claims
of
it's a classified
CH-47
program
Chinooks.
that supersedes
Military
federal law.
transport.
My
Flying in
staff has no
formation.
record of
Torres's
any
radio
program by
crackled
that
to
name.
life.
Captain,
Black
this is
Project?
Tower. We have
Possibly,
4
or
inbound
he's bluffing.
helicopters requesting
Either way,
immediate
tread
landing.
carefully.
Authorization
If Prometheus
code
is real,
is you're about
the
to
controller
enter waters
paused,
even
his
I
voice
can't
shaking.
navigate.
Sir,
The line went
it's
dead.
a joint chief's
Avery looked at
authorization.
the others,
4
seeing her concern
stars,
reflected in their
4
faces.
of them.
What's Prometheus?
Through the mess hall
Walsh
windows,
asked. Everyone
According
watched
to
as the
Greek
helicopters
mythology, the
descended
Titan
onto
who
the
stole
parade
fire
ground.
from the gods
Even
and
at a
gave it to
distance, the
humanity.
stars on the aircraft
Avery
were
pulled out her
visible.
father's
These
notebook,
weren't just
finding
finding
a single reference.
These were the
My
highest
father
ranking
wrote,
officers in their
Prometheus
respective
burns everything
branches.
it touches.
Helen closed
Stay
her eyes.
away.
They said
Sound
if Ghost
advice,
Protocol was
Torres
ever
said
activated,
nervously.
they'd come.
If Phoenix
I
himself
didn't
was
think
worried
they'd
about
remember
it.
after all these
Phoenix
years.
was worried about a lot
General
of
Robert
things,
Anderson,
Brennan
Army
interjected.
Chief of Staff,
But he never let
General
fear stop
Patricia
him from
Thompson,
doing what was
Marine
right.
Corps Commandant.
Avery made a decision.
Admiral James Hayes,
We continue
Chief
the
of Naval
investigation.
Operations.
If Prometheus
General
is
Michael
real,
Mitchell,
we'll deal with it
Air
when we
Force
have
Chief
to.
of Staff.
For now, we focus on
They
what we
walked
can
in
prove.
formation across
Fraud,
the parade ground,
conspiracy,
their aides
and
struggling
murder.
to keep pace.
The insurance
Every Marine
company
on the
Admiral
base had
Huxley
stopped
had counted
what
on
they
for
were
his
doing
legal
to
defense
watch.
withdrew coverage once
Jake
federal
looked at Helen
charges
in
were
amazement.
filed.
Military
Four
legal
service
insurance
chiefs.
for one
Even
person,
the premium packages
Helen's voice
marketed
was
to
quiet.
flag officers.
Ghost Team 6
specifically
didn't officially
excluded
exist,
coverage for
but we
federal
ran
felony
operations for all
prosecutions.
branches.
We were the
He'd have to
solution
fund
when
his
conventional
defense from
forces
personal
couldn't
assets.
operate.
When
When
the
the
mission
mission
was
frozen
dark,
pending the
too
investigation,
dangerous,
or too
Walsh
politically
received another
sensitive
call.
for acknowledged units.
The FBI found Thomas
The generals
Kramer's
entered the
family.
mess hall.
They're in
The room
protective
fell
custody,
silent.
willing
Every
to
Marine
testify
snapped to
about the
attention.
threats they
The
received
generals moved
before his
past them all,
disappearance.
heading straight for
Any
Helen.
physical evidence
She stood
linking
still,
Huxley
not
to
at
the threats?
attention. She wasn't
Emails from
military
IP
anymore,
addresses tracing
but
back
with
to
a bearing
Naval
that
Base
commanded
Coronado.
respect nonetheless.
Phone records showing
General
calls
Anderson
from
spoke
Huxley's
first.
personal cell
Hello, 6.
to Kramer's home
General,
the day before he vanished.
We thought you were dead.
Sloppy, Brennan
That was
observed.
the idea, sir.
The Admiral got comfortable.
Why activate the
Thought his
protocol
rank made him
now,
untouchable.
after 15
Arrogance
years?
is often the
Helen
downfall of
gestured to
powerful
Cosmo.
men.
Avery
He found
replied,
me,
which
thinking
means
of
her
others
mother's
can
words
too.
years ago when
And he
explaining
mentioned
why
Hydra.
she'd chosen
If
law
that
over
network is
medicine.
real,
If
they
there are
forget
truly
that gravity
47
affects
embedded
everyone
assets,
equally.
then the country
The
needs to
afternoon
know.
wore on as they
General
built their
Thompson
case.
stepped forward.
Each piece of
She was the
evidence
first
adding
female
weight to the
Marine Corps
prosecution.
commandant. Financial
records
records
showed
showed
millions in
kickbacks and
kickbacks
something deeper.
funneled through shell companies.
You could have stayed hidden.
Equipment test
could have let him
results
complete
had been
his
falsified.
mission. He would have killed
forensic
7
analysts
Marines
called
and stolen classified
amateur
defense
manipulation.
specifications, ma'am.
Hiding
Witnesses
stopped
emerged
being an
from
option the
shadows,
moment he
emboldened
entered
by
this base.
Huxley's arrest.
Admiral Hayes cleared his throat.
At 5:30
The president has been
p.m.,
briefed.
Avery
He's
stood
authorized
on the
full
federal
reinstatement
building's
if you want
observation
it.
deck.
Your previous
Watching
rank,
the sun
back
set
pay
over
for
San
15
Diego
years.
Bay.
Full honors.
Naval
Helen
vessels
shook her
moved
head.
through the harbor.
I'm done with killing,
practiced
Admiral.
precision.
I've been done since
Their crews
Bosnia.
unaware of the
Then what do you
earthquake that had
want?
shaken their
General
command
Mitchell
structure.
asked.
Master
Helen
Chief
looked at Brennan
Drake
joined
and
her,
Maria,
offering
at
a cup
Derek.
of coffee.
At all the
Black,
young Marines
no
who had
sugar.
witnessed something
Figured you
extraordinary
for someone
tonight.
who takes it
These
serious.
kids need training.
Good
Real
guess.
training.
She accepted
Not just
the
how to
cup.
fight in
Its
daylight
warmth
with
contrasting
$1 million
with the
equipment,
cooling evening
but how to
air.
operate
Master
when
Chief,
everything goes dark.
What will happen to
when
the SEALs
technology
now?
fails,
With their
when they're
admiral
outnumbered
disgraced?
and outgunned?
We'll adapt.
You want
It's
to
what we
teach?
do.
He
I
leaned
want to
against
make
the
sure
railing,
that the next
his
time
scarred
someone like
hands steady
Kozlov
despite
comes
the
calling,
caffeine.
there's more
But
than
there will
one
be
old
soul
janitor who
searching.
can stop them.
How did we not
The
see
generals
it?
exchanged
How did we let him
glances.
operate
Anderson
for so
nodded
long?
slowly.
Because
The
you
Ghost
wanted to
Protocol
believe in your
Academy.
leadership.
We've
Trust
had the
is
plans
essential
drawn
in
up for
combat.
20 years.
Trust
waiting
but
for the right
verified.
person to run
We
it.
forgot the
I
second
have
part.
conditions.
He was
Helen
quiet
said.
for a moment.
Name them. Your father never
First,
forgot.
it's open to all
He verified
branches.
everything.
Second,
trusted nothing
women
at
get
face
equal
value.
consideration
It's why
for
he was
selection.
so good at intelligence
Third,
work. We focus
it's
on
also why
protective
he's dead.
operations. Saving
Maybe.
lives,
Or
not
maybe he
taking
died
them.
because he was the
Fourth,
only
she
one
looked
brave
at
enough
Jake.
to look for
I
truth
get to
in a
choose
world of
my
lies.
first candidates. They stood in
Jake's eyes
companionable
widened.
silence.
After
Watching
everything
lights
he'd
flicker
done,
on across
after
the
the way
city.
he'd treated
Somewhere
her,
out there,
she was
Flex
choosing
Tech
him.
executives were
Helen saw
destroying
his
documents.
documents.
Your
Your
grandfather would
drives,
never forgive
calling
me
lawyers.
if I didn't give you the
machinery
chance
of
to be
cover-up
better than
grinding
you were
into
tonight.
motion.
Even as
Besides,
federal agents
she
closed
smiled
in
slightly.
Ma'am, you have
Torres
his eyes.
approached, his face
He could
grave.
see in complete
We have a
darkness, too,
problem.
once I
Judge
taught him
Morrison,
how.
the one who
General
signed
Anderson
Huxley's
extended
arrest
his
warrant.
hand.
He's been
Welcome
in a car
back, Colonel
accident.
Morrison.
Avery's
Helen
coffee
looked
cup
at his
stopped
hand for a
halfway
long
to her
moment,
lips.
then shook it.
When?
It's still
30
Carter.
minutes ago,
Helen
his
Carter.
vehicle was hit by a
The colonel
truck that
died
ran
in
a red
Bosnia
light
with her team.
The truck driver fled
The janitor
the scene.
survived
Morrison's
to teach their
condition
lessons.
critical.
Then welcome
He's in
back, Ms.
surgery
Carter.
at UC San
Maria
Diego
Santos
Medical
stepped
Center.
forward tentatively.
The coffee
Ma'am,
suddenly tasted like
could I-
ashes. The Brotherhood,
consider
or
me for the
Prometheus, or
Academy?
whatever they called
Helen
themselves,
studied her.
had struck
The
back.
young woman who
the
had
message
kicked
was
her
clear.
while she was down,
Pursue this
who had called her
investigation
trash.
and face
Why?
the consequences.
Because tonight
double
I learned
security
that
on all
real
witnesses
strength isn't about
Avery
size
ordered.
or
And I want
intimidation.
protection details
It's about
on the
protecting
prosecution
others
team.
even when they
Walsh
don't
appeared
deserve
in the
it.
doorway.
You protected
Already
us
done.
after we.
The
Her
FBI
voice
is
broke.
treating Morrison's
After we were
accident as
horrible
attempted
to you.
murder.
Traffic
Everyone
cameras
deserves
showed
a
the
second
truck
chance,
accelerating
Santos.
into the
Even
intersection,
bullies who kick
not
old
braking.
women.
They're
Derek
escalating.
Chen raised his
Brennan
hand.
observed grimly.
I want in too.
Whoever's behind
I
this
want to learn
isn't
how
going
you
to let
did what you
Huxley
did.
take the fall
The
alone.
acoustic targeting,
then we
the
escalate
movement
prediction.
too.
It's
Avery
like you
pulled out
turn
her phone,
darkness into
dialing
an
a number
advantage.
from memory.
Helen nodded
Director,
slowly. This is lame.
Darkness is only
I need a
frightening if you
JSOC
don't
protection
understand
detail and a safe
Once you
house.
learn its
Yes,
language,
sir.
it becomes your
Prometheus is
greatest
active.
ally.
The
Kozlov
safe house was a
suddenly spoke
nondescript
up, his
two-story
voice
building
bitter.
in suburban
You're
Chula
making a
Vista,
mistake.
surrounded by
Hydra won't
identical
stop.
homes filled with
They
Navy
know you're
families
alive
who
now.
wouldn't ask questions
They'll come
about
for
black
you.
SUVs
For all
and
of
armed
you.
guards.
Avery
Avery
walked
stood in
over
the
to
command
him,
center they
knelt
had
down
established
so they were eye
in what had
level.
been a family room.
Let them come.
Watching feeds
I've
from
been
security
hiding for
cameras
15
while Master
years,
Chief
Victor.
Brennan
I'm tired
coordinated
of
with the
hiding.
protection
She
detail.
leaned closer.
Judge Morrison is
speaking in
stable.
Russian.
Torres reported.
Tell your handlers
entering
that
with a
Phantom
tablet.
6 is
He's
dead,
conscious,
but
and
Helen
Helen
Carter
Carter
is
is
very
Can
much
he
alive.
identify the truck driver?
And she's going to train
Better,
an entire
he recognized
generation
him.
of ghosts.
Former SEAL,
Kozlov's
discharged
face
5
paled.
years ago.
You're
for
going to
excessive
create an
force.
army of operators
Now works
like
private
yourself?
security for guess who?
No.
I'm
Flex
going to
Tech,
create
Avery
something
said
better.
without hesitation.
Protectors
They
who
are
operate in
subsidiary,
darkness but
Titan
serve the
security
light.
solutions.
She stood,
Torres
switching back
pulled up
to English.
corporate records.
Your war
They
is over,
provide
Victor.
personal protection
You lost the
for
moment
defense
you walked
industry
into my mess hall.
executives.
Looks like they
The generals
also
were
handle
already
problems
making
that
plans,
require more
speaking
direct
rapidly into
solutions.
secure phones.
The tablet
The
showed a
academy
roster
would be
of Titan
fast-tracked.
employees. Resources
Nearly
would be
all were
allocated,
former special
but
operations.
Helen wasn't listening.
Men
she was
trained
looking
to kill
around the mess
efficiently
hall and
her mess
disappear
hall.
without
without trace.
where she'd spent 15
The
years
Brotherhood
in humble
had its
service,
own private army,
maintaining her cover, keeping
Ma'am,
her skills
one of
sharp
the
by
JSOC
observing everyone
operators
who
called
came
out.
through.
We have
Jake
approached
approached
hesitantly.
3
Ms.
vehicles
Carter,
approaching.
Helen,
Tactical
I need to tell you
spacing.
something. Speak freely,
Avery
Morrison.
moved to the window,
My grandfather,
studying the approaching
before he
SUVs
died,
through night
he used to
vision
tell me
optics.
stories
They
about
stopped
a
exactly
warrior who
outside
moved
the
like
property
smoke,
line,
who could
engines
fight in
running,
complete
positioned
darkness,
to block
who
all
saved
exit
his life
routes.
in Bosnia.
They're not trying to
Jake's
hide,
voice
Brennan
trembled.
observed.
He said
They
she was
want
the
us to
bravest
know they're
person
here.
he ever knew.
Her phone
but he
rang.
also said she
Unknown
was the
number,
saddest,
but she recognized
because she
the voice
carried the weight of
immediately.
everyone she couldn't
Admiral
save.
Huxley,
Helen's
calling from
composure
federal
finally
custody.
cracked slightly.
Hello,
A single
Avery.
tear ran down
I hope
her
you're
cheek.
enjoying your evening.
Tim always saw too much.
How are you calling
He left
me?
me something.
You're supposed to
Told
be in
me to give it
isolation.
to her if I ever found her.
my dear.
I thought he was
You
talking
still don't
about
understand.
a myth, a legend.
The Brotherhood has members
I never
everywhere.
imagined.
Guards,
Jake pulled out a small
administrators,
wooden box
even
from his
federal
pocket.
prosecutors.
He carried this for
We're not an
20
organization.
years. Said
We're
it
a
belonged to
philosophy.
someone who sacrificed
The philosophy
everything
that
for
American
others.
strength requires
Helen opened the
certain
box with
moral
trembling
flexibility.
fingers. Inside was a challenge
murdering
coin,
whistleblowers,
worn smooth by years
like
of handling.
protecting
On
programs
one
that
side,
keep this
the
nation
Ghost Team
dominant.
6 insignia.
His voice
on the
carried
other,
the
6
conviction of a
names,
true believer.
the 5 who died.
Do you know what
and
Prometheus
hers.
really
He
is?
had this made after the
Enlighten
memorial
me.
service, Jake
It's the
explained.
next generation
Said the
of
6th
warfare.
ghost was still out
Directed
there,
energy
still
weapons,
watching over people,
AI-controlled
still protecting
drone
those who
swarms,
couldn't protect
bioweapons
themselves.
that can target
Helen held
specific
the coin
genetic
tightly,
markers.
her eyes closing
Science
as
fiction
memories
made
flooded
real.
back.
Decades
Your
ahead of our
grandfather was
enemies.
more than my spotter,
And FlexTech
Jake.
provides
He was my
components.
conscience.
Flex
When the
Tech
darkness got
provides
too
cover.
deep,
When
when
I
I
couldn't
couldn't
see
see
the
the
difference
difference
between
between justice and
black
vengeance
research
anymore,
that Congress
he pulled
would
me
never
back.
approve.
He said
Every
you saved
dollar
300
from a
children in
defective
Bosnia
radio
buys us
317
technology that China
Helen
and Russia
corrected,
can
but
only
I couldn't
dream
save
about.
my team.
Avery felt
They
pieces
died
clicking
because I
into
made a
place.
choice.
Save
You're
the children
saying the
or
equipment
save my
failures
people.
were intentional?
I chose the children.
You killed American
and I've
soldiers
lived with
to
that
fund
choice
illegal
for
weapons
28
research.
years. General Thompson stepped
Sacrifices.
forward. You made the right
corrected.
choice, Helen.
Every
Those
war
children
has
are adults
casualties.
now.
Those
Many
men
of them
died
have
to
families
ensure
of their
American
own.
dominance
You
for the
gave them
next
lives.
century.
Your team would have been
They
proud
died
to
because you
sacrifice
sold them
for.
defective
I
equipment.
know, Helen said
The equipment
quietly,
worked exactly as
but
designed.
knowing and feeling
90%
are different things.
reliability,
The base was
10%
fully alert
failure
now.
rate.
Marines
Enough
were
to
gathering
generate
outside
profit
the mess hall,
without raising
trying to catch a
suspicion.
glimpse of the living
Until
legend.
your father started
Someone
seeing
started a slow
patterns.
clap, then
The
another.
admission hit like
Soon,
a physical
the
blow.
entire
Her
base
father
was
had been
applauding.
right.
Not
The
the dramatic
failures weren't
celebration of a
accidents or
sports victory,
incompetence,
but the deep,
calculated
respectful
murder.
acknowledgement
Phoenix
of
was
service
brilliant,
beyond measure.
Huxley continued.
Helen looked
Too
uncomfortable
brilliant.
with the attention.
He found
She turned
connections
to the
we
general.
thought were invisible.
If we're doing
So,
this academy,
we arranged
I
for the
have
Taliban
one more
to receive
condition.
intel about his
Name
team's
it,
route.
Anderson said.
The radio failures
No
just
publicity,
ensured they couldn't call
no
for help.
media,
You gave
no
American
glory.
positions to the enemy.
Ghosts don't seek
Even
spotlights.
Brennan, listening on speaker,
Agreed.
looked sick.
Helen nodded.
We gave
then looked around
outdated
the mess hall
intelligence
one more
that happened to
time.
become
I'll
accurate.
need to train my
Plausible
replacement. This place
deniability
won't
is an
clean
art
itself.
form, Ms. Lane.
Ma'am,
You're confessing
Colonel
to
Richards
treason.
spoke up.
I'm
still
explaining
holding his head
reality.
from the earlier
This call is
takedown.
encrypted and
I think
routed
we
through
can manage
17
professional
countries.
cleaning staff.
By the time your
Professional
technical
cleaning
trace
staff
it,
don't
the data
notice
will be
when someone's been
destroyed.
casing the
I'm
base
telling
for
you this
3
as a
months,
courtesy,
Helen pointed
professional
out.
to professional.
Sometimes the best
Walk away.
security
Take
is the
a generous
person everyone
retirement,
ignores.
maybe a consulting
She walked
position
toward the
with a
door,
nice
then
think tank.
paused. The
Your
7 Marines who
investigation
were
ends
here tonight,
or
Morrison,
what? Or you
Santos,
join your parents.
Chen, and
Your
the
mother's
others.
heart attack was
They're my
induced
first
using a
selection for the
classified
academy.
pharmaceutical
They've already
that
had
mimics
their first
natural
lesson.
cardiac arrest.
Which was? General Mitchell
undetectable
asked.
unless
Never
you know
judge a book
exactly
by
what
its
to look
cover,
for.
and always
We have
be
plenty
kind
more.
to the cleaning staff.
Avery's hand tightened
She
on the
smiled
phone
slightly.
until her knuckles went
You never
white.
know when your life
You're
might
threatening a
depend
federal
on it.
investigator.
As Helen
I'm
walked out
offering
into
you
the
a
night,
choice.
the general's
the same
following
choice
at a
we gave your
respectful
father.
distance.
He
Jake called
chose
out,
poorly.
"Ms. Carter!"
He chose honor.
What happens now?
And where did that
She
get
turned
him?
back.
Dead in a
And for a
foreign
moment,
country,
Jake
his
saw
daughter
not the
growing
old
up
janitor,
without him,
not
his
the
wife
legendary
dying of grief
operator,
disguised as
but
heart
simply
failure.
a woman who had found
Huxley's
purpose
voice
again
softened with
after
false
years in
sympathy.
the shadows.
Don't repeat their
Now,
mistakes.
Mr. Morrison,
Here's my
we get to
counteroffer.
work. Avery
Your
said
grandfather
coldly.
used to say
We
that
provide
the
full
hardest
disclosure
battles aren't
about
fought with
Prometheus,
weapons, but with
testify
wisdom.
against your
The academy
co-conspirators
opens
in 2 weeks,
and I'll recommend
Don't
life
be late.
imprisonment instead of
Yes, ma'am.
execution for
Helen
treason.
walked across the parade
Huxley
ground.
laughed, her stride
Execution?
different now.
This isn't
Not
the
the
Cold
shuffle of an
War.
old
We
janitor,
don't execute
but
people
not
for
quite the
treason
predatory
anymore.
grace of an elite
We do when they
operator
directly
either.
cause
It was
the
something
deaths
in
of
between.
American service
The
members
walk of
by
someone who had
providing
found
intelligence
balance
between
between
who they
forces
were
and
you
who
just
they had
confessed
to
to
be.
getting my
Behind
father's
her,
team
Kozlov was
ambushed.
being loaded
That's not
into
just
a secure
treason,
transport.
it's murder.
He
with
would be
special
interrogated,
circumstances.
his Hydra network
Silence on the
exposed
line.
and dismantled.
Then,
the 47
vehicles
embedded
outside your
assets
safe
he
house
mentioned
contain
would
enough
be
firepower
identified
to
and
level the building.
neutralized. But
You
that
have
was
10
work
minutes
for
to
others
decide.
now. Helen
The
had
line
a
went
different
dead.
mission.
General
Avery looked at
Anderson
the team
walked
assembled
beside
in the
her.
room.
You know
6
this changes
JSOC
everything.
operators,
Ghost
Master
Protocol
Chief
Academy
Brennan
will
revolutionize
revolutionize
how we
Torres
train
and
special
2
FBI
operators.
agents.
13
It's not
people
about creating
against an
super
unknown
soldiers
number of
general.
trained killers.
It's about teaching
Options
them that the most
she asked the
powerful
senior
weapon
JSOC
isn't
operator,
technology
a Delta
or
Force
strength.
captain named Williams.
It's understanding.
We can hold this
understanding
position
terrain,
indefinitely.
understanding
They make a
enemies,
move, we
but
call
most
in backup.
importantly, understanding
This is still American
themselves.
soil. They can't
And
just
you think
assault
these 7
a federal
Marines have what
safe
it
house.
takes?
They
Helen
can
glanced
if they
back
make
at
it look
the
like
mess
something hall where Jake and the
Torres
others
pointed
stood
out.
watching. They faced their fear tonight. They saw their assumption shattered.
gang violence.
They learned humility.
This neighborhood has enough
That's more than
military
most
families
operators learn.
that people
in
are
years of
used to
training.
unusual activity.
Even the ones who bullied you. Brennan studied
especially
the tactical
them.
display.
They've learned
3
the hardest
vehicles,
lesson of all.
Probably 4
that
or
strength
5
without honor is
operators
just
each.
violence.
That's
and violence
15
without
to 20
purpose
hostiles.
is just cruelty.
Bad odds if they're
A
all
secure
former
phone
special
rang.
operations.
Anderson answered.
They
"Listen,"
won't attack.
then handed
Avery
it to
said
Helen.
suddenly. This is
"It's for you."
psychological warfare.
Helen
They
took
want
the
us
phone
scared,
reluctantly.
making mistakes.
Yes.
If they wanted us dead,
Ms. Carter,
they wouldn't announce themselves.
The voice was familiar,
She pulled out
but
her
older,
phone,
more
not her
mature.
encrypted government device.
This
but
is
her
Anna
personal
Volkov.
cell.
She
She might not
scrolled through
remember me,
contacts
but until she found a number she hadn't
Little
called
Anna?
in years.
Helen's voice
Sarah?
softened.
It's Avery Lane, Phoenix's daughter.
From Sarajevo?
Captain Sarah Mitchell, Admiral Huxley's niece,
Not so
commanding
little
a destroyer
anymore.
in the Persian Gulf.
I'm 37
Answered
now.
immediately. Avery,
Married with
I
3
heard about my
children of
uncle.
my own.
I'm sorry about everything.
The woman's voice
I need
broke
your help.
slightly.
Anything. I saw the
been
news
refusing
bulletin.
Flex Tech equipment.
They said
You
Phantom
knew
6
something
was
was
alive.
wrong.
I suspected.
I had to call.
Equipment would
Had
arrive
to
with
thank
perfect
you.
documentation.
You saved my
but
life
feel
when I was
wrong.
9 years old.
Weight slightly off.
You carried me out
materials
of that
that didn't
trafficking
match
center
specifications.
yourself.
I
Helen's
couldn't
eyes
prove
closed.
anything, so
Memories
I cited
flooding back.
compatibility issues
Anna with the
and
red
sourced
ribbons in her hair.
alternatives.
You
remembered
protected
your crew.
I remember
It's a captain's
all
responsibility.
317.
Sarah's voice
There was
hardened.
silence on the line.
Unlike
Then
my
Anna
uncle,
spoke again.
I take that seriously.
My daughter is 17
I need
now.
everything
She wants
you
to be a
have.
Marine.
Documentation,
I've been terrified.
test
thinking
results,
about her in
correspondence.
But
and
knowing
Sarah
you're training the
were
next
being
generation,
watched. This call is
I'm
probably
not afraid
monitored
anymore.
Let them listen.
What's her name?
I'm done protecting
Helena.
the family name
I
while
named her
sailors
after you.
die.
Helen
The
had to
connection
take a
crackled
moment
with
to
distance
compose
and
herself.
encryption. Avery,
Send me her
there's something
information.
else.
If she's
3
anything
weeks
like
ago,
her mother,
we intercepted
she'll make an excellent
communications
ghost.
between Iranian
After
forces.
ending the call,
They were
Helen
discussing
handed the phone
American
back to
equipment
Anderson.
failures.
They had reached
specific
nondescript
technical
building
details
at the edge
about
of the
Flex
base.
Tech products.
She looked at it with
They knew
surprise.
things they shouldn't know.
This is
the implication
your
was
quarters for
staggering.
tonight.
Someone's
Anderson
selling
said.
information to
Tomorrow
hostile
we'll discuss the
powers
academy
or
details.
trading it. But tonight,
Iran suddenly
you
has
should rest.
technical capabilities
You've carried
they
this
shouldn't
burden
possess
alone
for another
too
decade.
long. I think
Helen looked
Prometheus
at the
isn't just
building,
researching
then back at
advanced
the mess hall
weapons.
in the
They're
distance.
bartering
I
American
should clean up.
vulnerabilities
The morning
for
shift will
foreign
need
technology.
Helen. Thompson
That's
interrupted
treason on a
gently.
scale.
You're not the
Avery
janitor
couldn't
anymore.
finish the sentence.
No,
The enormity of the conspiracy
but
defied
I'm not Phantom 6
comprehension.
either. That
It's why
person
I've been
died in
documenting
Bosnia
everything.
with her team.
I'm sending you an
She
encrypted
looked at
file
each general
now.
in turn.
Everything I've
I'm
collected
something
over
new
2
now.
years.
Someone who
The
teaches
download
others to
began
walk in
immediately.
darkness without
Gigabytes
losing
of
their
data
light.
flowing through military
General Hayes
satellites
nodded
to
slowly.
Avery's tablet.
What should we call
As
you
it
then?
transferred, she
Helen
watched
thought
the
for a
vehicles
moment.
outside.
Instructor
They
Carter
hadn't
moved.
moved.
Just
Engines
another
still
teacher
running,
at just
waiting.
another training
Ma'am,
facility.
Williams called out.
There's nothing just
We have
another
air
about
support
what you're
inbound.
building.
2
Mitchell said.
Apache
That's
helicopters
the point,
from
General.
Camp
The
Pendleton.
most dangerous person
Whoever's in
any
those
room
vehicles
is
is
the
about
one
to
nobody
have a
notices.
very bad
I'm going
night.
to teach them to be
The sound of
invisible
rotor
in
blades
plain
became
sight,
audible in the distance,
to be
growing
protectors
louder
who
as
never
the
need
army attack
recognition,
helicopters
to be
approached.
ghosts who
The
guard
vehicles
the living.
outside suddenly
As the
reversed,
generals departed,
speeding away
leaving
as the
Helen
Apaches
alone outside
appeared
her
overhead,
temporary
their
quarters.
spotlights
She looked
turning
up at
night
the
into
stars.
day.
They're running.
The same stars
Torres
she'd
observed
navigated
with
by in
satisfaction.
Bosnia when
No,
her GPS
Avery
failed.
corrected.
They're
The same
regrouping.
stars her team
This was a
had seen
probe
on their last
testing
night
our
alive.
responses.
Now
I
they
kept
know
my
we
promise,
have military
she whispered to
support.
the night.
Her phone rang
I
again.
lived. This
and
time
now
it
I'll
was
make
the
sure
US
others
Attorney
learn what we
Walsh.
knew.
Avery,
Sometimes
we
the
have a
greatest
problem.
heroes are the ones
Huxley's
whose names
lawyer
are
just
never
filed a
known.
motion claiming
Inside
his
the
arrest
quarters,
was
she
illegal
found a
because
package
you
waiting on the
exceeded your
table.
authority.
No return address.
He's arguing
but
that
she
military
recognized the
personnel
handwriting.
can only be
She opened
arrested
it
by
carefully,
military
revealing a
police
set
for
of
crimes
dog
committed
tags.
on base.
Not hers.
That's
She'd
nonsense.
thrown those away years
Federal
ago.
law
These were new,
supersedes
freshly
I
minted.
know, but he's
Instructor
judge
Helen
shopping.
Carter, looking for
They
someone
read.
sympathetic
Ghost
to
Protocol
military
Academy.
independence. And on the
If he
back,
finds the
a
right
simple
judge,
inscription.
Huxley could be
the shadow
released
that
within
guards
hours.
the light.
Avery
There was
felt
a
the
note.
walls closing
Welcome
in.
back to the fight.
Legal maneuvering,
But this time,
physical
you're not
intimidation,
alone. A
systemic
friend who
corruption.
remembers Bosnia.
The Brotherhood was attacking
Helen held
on
the
all
tags for a
fronts.
long moment.
There's more.
Then put them
Walsh
on.
continued.
For
3
15
witnesses
years
have
she'd
recanted
hidden
their
from her
statements.
past.
They claim
Now
coercion.
she
say
would
you
use it to
threatened
forge
them.
a better future.
That's a lie.
Her phone,
of course it is.
the civilian
but it
one
muddies
she'd
the
carried
water,
as a janitor,
creates reasonable
buzzed
doubt.
with a text.
Huxley's
It was
legal
from
team
Jake
is
Morrison.
very good.
Miss
and they
Carter,
have unlimited
I'm reading my
resources.
grandfather's journal.
Through the window,
He wrote
Avery
about
saw
neighbors
every
emerging
day.
from their
He
homes.
said you taught
drawn
him
by
that
the
courage isn't the
helicopter noise.
absence of fear,
Military
but
families
action in spite
accustomed
of
to
it.
unusual
I want to learn
sights.
that too.
But even they
She
found
texted
Apaches
back.
hovering over
Lesson 1
suburbia
starts
noteworthy.
tomorrow.
Several were
0500.
recording with
Bring
their
the
phones.
others.
We need
What should
something
we
definitive,
prepare?
she told
Nothing.
Walsh.
The darkness
Something
will teach
Huxley
you
can't
everything
deny
you need
or
to know.
deflect. Like what? Outside, like
Camp
Prometheus
Pendleton
itself.
was settling into
If we
its
can
nighttime
expose the
routine.
program, show
Guards
the
walk
American
their
people
posts.
what their tax
Marines
dollars
slept
are really
in their
funding,
barracks.
the public
And
outrage
somewhere in
will
a
be
secure
unstoppable.
detention facility,
That's a dangerous game.
Victor Kozlov
Some
was
secrets are
beginning to
classified for
understand
good
that
reasons.
he'd made a catastrophic
and some
error.
are classified
For
to
those
hide
interested
crimes.
in learning real protective
Avery made a
tactics
decision.
from former
I'm
special
going to the
operations
source.
instructors.
What source?
Check out
the
the
one
online
place Huxley
defensive
can't
strategies
influence.
course.
The one person
This week
who knows
only,
everything
it's
but hasn't been
50% off
compromised.
for those ready to
she
step
hung
out
up
of
and
their
turned to the
comfort
team.
zone
Master
and into Chief,
confidence.
You said SEALs talked to
He thought
rangers
he
who
was
talked to
hunting
Delta.
an old woman.
I need to talk to
Instead,
someone specific.
he'd awakened something far
someone who
more
worked with my
dangerous.
father on
A
his last
teacher.
mission.
And teachers,
Brennan's eyes
unlike
widened in
soldiers, don't
understanding.
just win battles.
You want to talk to
They
Reaper?
create
generations
Who's
of
Reaper?
winners.
Torres asked.
Helen stood by the window.
Master
watching
Sergeant
the
Marcus
base she'd
Cole,
called home
Delta
for
Force.
15 years.
He was supposed to be on the mission where
everything
Phoenix
would
died,
change.
but got
The
pulled
Ghost
at the last
Protocol
minute for
Academy
a
would
priority
begin its
target
work.
in Pakistan.
7 Marines who
He's
had
always
started the
blamed
night
himself
as
for not
bullies
being
would
there.
begin their
Where is he
transformation
now?
into
Fort
protectors.
Liberty?
But
Teaching
tonight,
at the Special
she had
Operations
one more
Medical
task.
Course.
She picked
Still
up the
active
secure
duty,
phone Anderson
retired
had left
3 years
and
ago,
dialed a
but
number
works
from
as a
memory.
civilian instructor.
It rang
The
3
man's a
times
legend.
before a voice
4
answered in
silver
Russian.
stars.
This is
Distinguished
Control.
Service Cross.
This is
more
Phantom
Purple
6,
Hearts
Helen
than
said in
anyone
perfect
should
Russian.
survive.
Authentication,
Watch.
9:20
9:20
p.m. Pacific
Priority
time,
message
past
from
midnight
Moscow
on the East Coast.
But
There was
this
stunned
couldn't wait.
silence. Then
Get him on secure comm.
Phantom 6 is
Tell
dead.
him Phoenix's daughter needs
Phantom
to speak
6
with
is
him.
dead. Helen
20
agreed.
minutes later, the
But
encrypted
Helen
video
Carter is very
connection
much
established,
alive,
and
Master
she has a
Sergeant
message for
Marcus
your
Cole's
Hydra
weathered
network.
face filled the screen.
What message?
62
Schools in
years
session,
old,
class
built like
size,
granite,
unlimited,
with eyes that
graduation
had seen
rate
humanity's worst,
100%,
and somehow maintained
course title,
faith in its best.
How to Hunt
You
Hydra
look like him,
Operatives in
were his
Total
first
Darkness.
words. She
Same
paused.
eyes, same
Oh,
determination.
and Victor Kozlov?
Michael talked
He
about
failed
you constantly.
spectacularly.
A Master Sergeant Cole.
She hung up before
Marcus,
they could
please.
respond.
Your
Let them
father
worry.
saved my
Let
life
them
7
wonder.
times.
Let them
Least I
fear
can
what
do
was
is drop
coming.
the formality.
The mess hall lights
Marcus,
were off now.
I need to
The
know
space
about
that had been her
Prometheus.
battlefield just
His
hours
expression
ago,
darkened.
returning to mundane
That's a
normality.
conversation that'll get us
But
both
Helen knew
killed.
better.
They already
Every
tried
mundane
tonight.
space
I'm
could become
past
a
caring about
battlefield.
threats.
Every ordinary
He studied her
person
through
could
the
be
screen,
extraordinary.
weighing risks
Every
against
shadow could
obligations.
hide a protector.
Your father was
Jake
investigating
Morrison stood
Prometheus
outside
her
when he
quarters,
died.
having
He'd
run
found
all the way
evidence
from
that
his
American
barracks.
weapons technology
Ms. Carter,
was being traded to
I
foreign
couldn't sleep.
powers in
I keep
exchange for
thinking about what you
biological
said
weapons
about
research
darkness
data.
being an ally.
Biological weapons
Helen opened
are
the
banned
door.
by international
The young Marine
treaty.
who had shoved her,
Treaties
mocked
only
her,
matter if someone
humiliated
enforces
her.
them.
Now stood with
Prometheus
tears
operates
streaming down his
outside
face.
all oversight.
I'm so
answering
sorry,
only to a
he
council
said.
of defense contractors
Not just for
and
tonight,
intelligence officials.
for every veteran
who
I've
believe American
dismissed.
dominance
Every
justifies
person I've
any
judged by
means.
appearance.
Do you have
Every
proof?
time I chose
Marcus
cruelty
stood
over
and walked off
kindness.
screen.
When he returned,
Apologies
he held
are
the
words,
encrypted hard
Morrison.
drive.
Tomorrow,
everything your
you'll
father
begin making
collected
amends
plus
through
what I've
actions.
added since his death.
What if I'm not good enough?
Financial records,
What if I can't learn what you're teaching?
communications,
Test
Helen
data
studied
on
weapons that
so
violate
young,
every international
so much like his
law.
grandfather
But
before
Avery,
Bosnia.
if you
Your
use
grandfather
this,
asked me the
they'll
same
come for you
question
with
once.
everything they
Want to know
have.
what I told him?
They already
Jake
are.
nodded eagerly.
No, I told him
You've
that
seen
good
their
enough is
warning
the enemy
shots.
of great.
When
That fear of
Prometheus
failure
truly
is just
targets
another
someone,
darkness to
they
navigate.
don't just die.
And that the only
They're
way to
erased.
honor the fallen
Records
is to be
altered.
better than
Accomplishments
we were
attributed
yesterday.
to others.
Did he become
Families
great?
convinced they
He
never
became
existed.
something better.
Your father
He
was
became
being
reliable.
systematically deleted
in pitch
when he
darkness,
died.
under
Another
fire,
year,
and there would have
outnumbered
been
and
no
outgunned.
record of Phoenix
Tim
ever
Morrison
serving.
never failed
The
to
weight
watch
of that
my
revelation
six.
settled
That's
over
worth
the room.
more than greatness.
Not just murder,
That's
but
worth
complete
trust.
annihilation
Jake
of memory
straightened.
and
I
legacy.
want to earn that.
How do I stop
that
them?
trust?
You don't
Then
stop
be
them.
here at 0500.
You expose them.
And Morrison,
Sunshine is the only
yes, ma'am.
disinfectant that works
Bring
on
coffee,
this level of
black,
corruption.
the real stuff,
But it has
not
to be
that
all
mess
at
hall
once.
swamp
So
water.
overwhelming,
If I'm going to
they
turn you
can't
into
contain
ghosts,
it.
I need
like
proper
WikiLeaks.
fuel.
Bigger.
Jake actually smiled.
This needs to hit every
yes,
major
ma'am.
news outlet
0500.
simultaneously,
Real
with
coffee.
evidence so compelling.
As he ran
that
back to the
no
barracks,
amount of spin
Helen
can
allowed
deflect
herself
it.
a small smile.
Avery looked at
too.
the team around
The
her.
boy had
military
potential.
personnel
They all
sworn
did.
to protect
Even
classified
the ones who'd been
information.
cruel.
Federal
Maybe
agents bound
especially
by
them.
legal procedures.
They'd learned humility
What Marcus
tonight,
was suggesting
and that was the
bordered on
first
treason
requirement
itself.
for wisdom.
I'll need help.
Her phone rang
she said
again.
finally.
The civilian
You
one.
have it.
The
Caller
caller
ID
hundred
showed
of us.
unknown.
Operators
But you
who've
recognized
lost
the
breathing
brothers to
pattern before the
Prometheus
caller
decision,
even spoke.
who've seen American
28
technology
years,
in
and
enemy
she still
hands,
recognized
who've
it.
been ordered to
Hello,
forget what we
Dimitri,
witnessed.
she said
We're
calmly.
ready to stand up.
They say you captured
It'll end
Victor.
careers.
They say you're starting
Some
a school.
things matter more
Both
than
true.
careers.
You know
Honor,
I have to come
integrity.
for you now. It's
the
nothing
oath we
personal.
swore to defend the
I know.
Constitution against
Helen's
all
voice
enemies,
held no fear,
foreign and
only
domestic.
resignation.
Prometheus is
But
a
not
domestic
tonight.
enemy, Avery.
Tonight I'm
They're
just a
killing
tired old
Americans
woman
to
who
fund
needs
operations
sleep.
that violate
You were never
everything
just
we
anything
claim
to
stand
stand
for.
Dimitri paused.
Brennan stepped forward.
How long do I
Marcus,
have before
this
your
is Bill
academy
Brennan.
is operational?
If we do this, it needs
2
to be
weeks.
coordinated.
Then
One
I'll
voice,
see you in 13
one message,
days.
impossible to ignore.
Looking forward to
Already
it.
in motion.
She hung up and
Check
set
your
the phone
encrypted
aside.
channels in 30
Dmitri
minutes.
Volkov,
You'll see something
Anna's
interesting.
uncle, and
the
the
connection
best
tracker
ended,
the Soviet
leaving them in
Union
tense
ever
silence.
produced.
Torres was
He'd been
the first
hunting
to
her
speak.
for 3 decades.
If we participate
now,
in
he
unauthorized
finally knew where
disclosure
she
of
was.
classified information,
But Helen wasn't
we're
worried
looking
about
at federal
Dimitri.
prison.
She was thinking
Only
about
if we
tomorrow.
lose,
About 7
pointed out.
Marines who would
If we
begin their
win,
transformation.
we're whistleblowers who
about the
expose
ghost
the largest
alarmism that would rise
conspiracy
from
in
the
the ashes
American
of her
military
past.
history.
She looked
That's
at the
a big
challenge
if,
coin Jake
one of
had
the
given
FBI
her,
agents
running
said.
her thumb over
These
the
people
worn
have
surface.
resources we can't
6
match.
names.
5
Avery
dead.
pulled up Sarah
1
Mitchell's
presumed
files on
dead.
her tablet.
Tomorrow,
the evidence
she would
was
begin
damning.
creating a new
Communications
generation of
between
names.
FlexTech and
names that would
Iranian
never be known,
intermediaries,
never be
technology
celebrated,
transfers
but would
that
stand
explain
between
sudden
the
advances in
and
Chinese
those who
military
couldn't protect
capabilities.
themselves.
And
The
next
financial
morning arrived
records
showing
typical
hundreds of
California
millions in
Marine
off-the-books
fog.
transactions.
0500
100 hours
They've been
exactly.
selling out America
Helen
for
stood
20
in the empty
years,
training
she said
ground behind the
quietly.
mess hall.
Every
A place
military
she'd
advantage
observed for
we've
15
lost.
years, but
Every
never
operation
officially
that
entered.
went bad
She
because
wore
the
simple
enemy
black
knew too
tactical
much.
pants and a gray
Every
t-shirt.
soldier who died
No
from
equipment
rank,
failure.
no
It
insignia,
all traces back
nothing
to
to
Prometheus.
indicate who or
At
what she
9:50
was.
p.m.,
Jake
her
arrived
encrypted
first,
channel
carrying
activated.
a thermos
A
of
simple
coffee
message
that
appeared.
smelled like heaven
Watch the news.
compared to standard
She
military
turned on the
brew.
television
Behind
to find
him
every
came
major
Maria
network
Santos,
breaking
Derek
the same
Chen,
story.
and
Hundreds
the
of
4 other
special
Marines who had been
operations
in the mess
veterans
hall.
had
They all looked
simultaneously
nervous,
released statements
uncertain.
accusing
You came,
defense
Helen said
contractors of
simply.
systematic
We could
fraud
not
resulting
come,
in
Maria
operator
replied.
deaths. Not
The
after
coordination
last
was
night.
perfect. Helen
Each
poured
statement
herself
supporting
coffee,
the others,
took a sip,
creating an
and nodded
undeniable
appreciatively.
narrative. Former Navy
Colombian,
SEAL Rob O'Neill,
single
the man
origin.
credited with killing
Your
bin
grandfather
Laden,
had good
appeared
taste
on
too,
CNN.
Morrison.
I've
How
lost
do we
17
start?
teammates
Derek
to
asked.
equipment
His
failures that
technical
weren't
mind already
accidents.
trying to
It's
categorize
time
and
America
organize
knew
what
the
was about
truth.
to happen.
On Fox News,
We start
Medal
with
of Honor
forgetting
recipient
everything you
Dakota
think you
Meyer
know
spoke
about
directly
combat,
to camera.
Helen said.
We were betrayed
Line
by the
up,
people supposed
arms
to protect
length apart.
us. They
Defense
complied
contractors
immediately.
got rich
The casual
while warriors
arrogance from
died.
last night had been replaced with
MSNBC
eager attention.
featured retired
Close your
General
eyes,
Stanley
Helen
McChrystal.
instructed. I've
Now,
remained silent
tell me
too
what you
long.
hear.
Prometheus
The ocean
exists,
Jake said.
and it's a
What
cancer
else?
on our national security.
Helicopters from the airfield
The dam had broken.
Maria added.
Decades
Maybe
of
3
suppressed
clicks
truth
south.
flooding into public
Good.
consciousness.
What else?
Walsh called immediately.
Footsteps.
What
Derek
have you
said
done?
suddenly.
What needed
Someone's
to be
watching
done?
us.
Check your
Multiple
secure
someones.
emails. Avery
Helen
sent
smiled
everything.
slightly. Sarah Mitchell's
Open your
files,
eyes and turn
Marcus
around.
Cole's evidence. her
Behind them
father's
stood
notebook,
20 Marines,
the recorded
including
confession
Colonel
from
Richards,
Admiral Huxley,
Captain Torres, and
terabytes
Sergeant
of
Mills.
proof that American
They'd been
defense
approaching for the
contractors
last
had
2
been
minutes,
trading military
trying to
secrets
observe
for
without
profit
being
while
noticed.
killing service members.
Lesson
who
1,
threatened exposure.
Helen said.
This is
You're always being watched.
extensive.
The question
Walsh
is whether
said
you
after
know
a
it or
pause.
not. These
But
Marines
without
wanted
chain
to
of
see the
custody,
legendary
much of it
Phantom
won't
6
be
in
admissible
action.
in court.
But I'm not here to
It
put
doesn't
on a
need to
show.
be. Public
Morrison,
opinion is the court
Santos,
that matters now.
Chen, once
You're going
Americans
to demonstrate
demonstrate
what
what
you
you
learned
learned
last
last
night
night.
for contractor
We didn't learn
profits.
anything.
Political
Jake
pressure
protested.
will demand
We
action.
just survived.
Through the window,
Survival
she saw
is
the
the
3
first lesson.
SUVs returning.
You stayed calm
this
when the
time
lights went
accompanied
out.
by 2 more
You
vehicles.
followed instructions
The
from
Brotherhood
someone
was
you
mobilizing
dismissed
for
as
a
worthless
final
hours
assault.
before.
Williams,
You navigated
how long
in
until
complete
backup
darkness.
arrives? That's more than most
10 minutes
people
for ground
accomplish
units,
in a lifetime
5
of
for air
training.
support.
Mills
We
stepped
might not
forward.
have 5
Ma'am,
minutes.
with respect,
The vehicle stopped.
the base commander
Doors
wants to
opening
know
in
when the
synchronized
official
precision.
academy starts.
20 operators
It started
emerged,
the moment that
weapons
these
at
men
ready,
decided to show
moving
up
toward the safe
despite
house
their
with
shame
practiced
and fear,
efficiency.
Helen replied.
Then something
Everything else is
unexpected
just
happened.
paperwork.
Master Chief
Over the
Brennan's
next
phone
2
rang.
hours,
Helen
he
led
answered,
them through
listened,
exercises that
then
seemed
handed
simple,
it to Avery,
but were impossibly
for
difficult.
you, someone who
Standing
insists
perfectly
on
still
speaking
for
with you
20
personally.
minutes.
Walking
The voice on the
heel to
other
toe
end
in a
was
straight
cultured,
line,
with
elderly,
eyes closed,
carrying authority
identifying
beyond any
objects
rank
by
or
sound
title.
alone.
Ms.
Counting
Lane,
heartbeats
my
in
name
a
is
crowd.
irrelevant, but
This is
I speak for
ridiculous,
people who
one of
shape
the watching
American
Marines
policy
muttered.
at the highest
This isn't
levels.
combat
The
training.
real power behind
Helen heard him
Prometheus.
from 30 feet away.
Then you're
You're right,
responsible for
Corporal
murdering
Hendricks.
American
It's
soldiers.
not combat training.
I'm
It's
responsible for
survival
maintaining
training.
American
Combat
global
lasts
dominance.
seconds or minutes.
Every empire
Survival
requires
lasts a
sacrifice.
lifetime.
We're
Which
not
would
an
you rather
empire,
master?
aren't we?
Hendricks flushed,
Military bases
not having
in 70
realized she could
countries,
hear him,
the
or
dollar
lower
is
his
global
name.
reserve
He'd
currency,
never introduced
cultural
himself, but
hegemony
Helen had
that
been
makes
watching
the world
everyone
wear
on
our
base for
jeans
15
and watch our
years.
movies.
She knew them all.
That's empire,
By 0700, word
and
had spread
empires
across
don't
the
maintain
base.
themselves.
The training ground was
They don't
surrounded by
require murdering their own
Marines,
soldiers
all
either.
wanting to witness
Don't
history.
they?
Rome
Helen
decimated
ignored them,
legions
focusing
to
on her
maintain
7
discipline.
students.
The British
Santos,
Empire
she
sacrificed
called out,
thousands to
"You
hold
kicked me
India.
last night when
We've
I was
been
down.
remarkably efficient
Why?"
by comparison.
Maria's face
Outside,
reddened.
the operators
Because
had
I
formed a
could.
perimeter,
Because it
waiting
made
for
me feel
orders.
powerful.
The Apache helicopter
And what did you
circled
learn?
overhead. That
Weapon
real
systems
power is
locked,
choosing
but
not
not
to hurt someone
engaging.
when you can.
What do you want? Avery
Wrong.
asked. Helen
To
said
offer you a
flatly.
deal.
Real
Complete
power is
disclosure
making
about
someone
Prometheus
stronger
in
through their
exchange
pain.
for your silence.
That
You'll
kick
know
taught
everything.
me you were positioned
every
at my 4
operation,
o'clock. Wait
every
on your left
technology,
foot, favoring your
every
right
decision.
knee. The one you injured
You'll
in basic
understand
training,
why we
but
do
never
what we do.
reported because you didn't want to seem
then?
weak. Then
Maria's
you join
eyes
us or
widened.
disappear.
How could you
Those are the
possibly
only
know about
options
my
that
knee?
end with you alive.
You've been compensated
Federal
for 3
investigation
years.
attorneys
I've watched
specializing
you
in
favor
cases
it
that
every
cross
time you came
military
through the mess hall.
and civilian
Last
jurisdiction
night, that knowledge
maintain
could have let me
offices in
cripple
major
you
cities.
permanently with one
Available
strike.
24/7
Instead,
for
I chose to
consultation
protect you
at
despite
military
your
justice
cruelty.
defenders.
That's power.
She
Their
turned to
expertise
Jake.
becomes
You shoved an
crucial
old
when
woman for
dealing
being
with
classification
slow. What does
issues
that make
that
you?
could determine case
A
outcomes.
coward,
Jake said
Avery looked
immediately.
at the team
No.
around her,
Saw
makes you
resolve in their
uninformed.
faces
You
despite
acted
the
on
odds.
incomplete
These
intelligence.
were warriors who'd
In the
faced
field,
worse than
that
death.
gets people killed.
They'd faced dishonor.
Your grandfather
and
never
chosen
acted
without
integrity.
complete intelligence.
I have a counteroffer,
even if it meant
she
waiting in a
said.
sniper hide
Complete
for
shutdown of
72 hours
Prometheus
without
full
moving.
prosecution of
72
everyone involved,
hours,
and
Bosnia,
restitution to the
January
families of every
94,
service
minus
member
20
killed by your
degrees.
fraud.
He could have
That's not
taken
an
the shot
offer,
after
it's
12
a
hours,
fantasy.
but something
Check the
felt
news
wrong.
again.
So
the old man
we
paused,
waited.
presumably
60
looking at
hours
another
in,
screen.
the target
target's children arrived before he spoke again. If Tim had taken that early shot,
edge of
6
concern.
kids would have been orphaned.
You've started something
Instead,
you can't
we
control.
waited another 12
Good.
hours.
Control
until
is
the
what
target
got
was
us
here.
alone.
Maybe chaos
Captain
will get
Torres
us out.
interrupted.
She
Ma'am,
heard him typing,
the generals
likely
are here.
sending orders to the operators
The 4
outside.
service chiefs
You
were
have
indeed
no
walking
idea
across
what you're
the
destroying.
destroying.
But the
Helen didn't
technologies
stop
we've
her lesson.
developed, she
The
continued
threats
as if
we've
they weren't
countered,
there.
the wars
Chen,
we've prevented.
she called out.
History
You
will judge
recorded
you
my
harshly.
humiliation last
History will
night.
judge me
You
honestly.
thought it was entertainment.
That's more than you'll
What
get.
is it now?
She hung up.
Derek
and
pulled out
immediately
his
addressed
phone,
the team,
showing the video.
They're going to breach.
Evidence.
Defensive positions.
Evidence of how wrong
the
I was.
JSOC operators
Evidence of what
moved with
not
fluid
to
precision.
be. Deleted.
Taking positions
Ma'am,
that covered all
deleted.
entry points.
The past is gone.
Brennan and Torres
Only
grabbed
lessons
rifles
remain.
from
the weapons cache.
Derek deleted
their
the video
military
without
training
hesitation.
overriding any
As he
hesitation
did, Helen
about
noticed
civilian
something.
law
His
enforcement
hands were
protocols.
perfectly steady.
No
Ma'am,
tremor,
no
William
hesitation.
said. Rules
The
of
nervous
engagement.
tech specialist was learning
Defend
controls.
ourselves. Protect
General
the
Anderson
evidence.
approached.
Survive.
Instructor
to testify.
Carter, we need to
She
discuss
pulled her
resources
father's
for the
SIG power
academy.
from her bag.
We have
Checking the
everything we
magazine.
need.
They want to
Helen
fight.
replied,
We give them
gesturing
one
into the
they'll
empty training
remember.
ground.
Space,
The lights cut out
students,
simultaneously,
and purpose.
plunging the house
You'll need
into
equipment,
darkness.
facilities,
Night vision
support
equipment
staff.
activated.
I
turning
need
the world
darkness,
green and
silence,
grainy.
and trust.
Through the windows,
Everything
Avery
else
saw the
is
operators
luxury.
advancing
General
using the same
Thompson
tactics
forward.
American forces
The president
had
wants to
perfected
meet
in
you.
Iraq.
There's talk
and
of a ceremony,
Afghanistan.
public
The irony
recognition.
wasn't lost on
Then
her.
the president
Americans about
misunderstands
to
what
fight
we're building
Americans
here,
using
Helen said
techniques
calmly.
developed to
Ghosts
fight
don't
America's
get
enemies.
ceremonies.
They don't
The
get
first
recognition.
breach came through the
They
back
get
door.
results.
A explosive
The public
charge
should
that
know
should
that
have stunned
heroes
the
like you
defenders.
exist.
But
The
Williams had
public should sleep
anticipated it.
soundly,
His
not
team
knowing we
positioned to
exist.
create
That's
overlapping
the whole
fields
point.
of fire that stopped
Before the
the
generals
assault
could
cold.
respond,
Contact
an alarm
rear,
sounded
he
across
called
the
out.
base.
His
Not the
suppressed
standard
rifle
drill
coughing
alarm,
steadily.
but the one reserved
The front
for
door
actual
exploded
threats.
inward simultaneously.
Colonel Richards' radio
but Torres
crackled
and an
to life.
FBI agent
Colonel,
were ready.
we have a
Their
breach.
weapons driving
North
back
perimeter.
the initial wave.
Single individual
The house became a
avoided all
battlefield.
sensors until the
Suppressed
final
weapons
fence.
creating a deadly
He's-
whisper of violence.
Sir,
Avery
he's asking
stayed
for
central,
Phantom 6 by
protecting
name.
the hard drives
Helen's
containing
expression
evidence
didn't
while
change.
coordinating with
Dimitri's
outside
early.
support.
He said,
"Where's our
13
backup?"
days.
2 minutes out.
You know who
Walsh
this is?
reported over
Anderson
comms.
demanded.
Federal
Dmitry
marshals and
Volkov,
FBI
former
SWAT
Spetsnaz
converging on
Alpha
your
Group.
position.
The Soviet
2
Union's
minutes was
best
an
tracker.
eternity in close
He's been
quarters
hunting me
combat.
since
The
1991.
attackers were good, using
Helen turned to her
flashbangs and
students.
smoke to disorient
Lesson 2
defenders,
is about to begin.
probing for weaknesses
Should we
with
call
professional
security?
patience.
Torres
Then
asked.
Brennan did something
No,
unexpected.
let him come.
He stood up
My
in full
students
view
need to
and
see what they're
bellowed in his
training to
command
become.
voice.
10
SEALs
minutes later,
stand down.
a figure emerged
This
from
is
the morning
Master
fog.
Chief William
Dmitry
Brennan.
Volkov
You're
was
attacking
73
fellow
years old,
Americans.
but moved like a man
The firing
half that
paused.
age.
Through
Tall,
the smoke,
scarred,
a voice
with
called
eyes
back.
that missed nothing.
Master Chief,
He stopped
is that
20
you?
meters from Helen.
Rodriguez,
hands visible,
you
but
stupid
ready.
son of a...
Hello,
what are you
little
doing?
ghost, he said. in
Following
accented
orders,
English.
Master Chief.
Hello,
They
old
said
wolf,
you'd gone rogue,
Helen replied.
that you were helping
You're
terrorists.
I was in the
look like
neighborhood.
I'm helping terrorists?
Thought I'd see this
I'm
academy
protecting a
I'm
federal
hearing about.
investigation
His
into
eyes
the
swept
murder
over the
of
7
American
Marines.
service members.
These are your students,
The attacking
children playing
operators
soldier.
held position.
Jake started to
Confusion
step
evident in
forward,
their
but
tactical
Helen's hand
formation.
stopped him without
These
even
were men
looking.
trained to
They're
follow
not
orders
playing.
without question.
They're learning,
but also men
learning
who'd
what?
served
To hide
under
in
Brennan,
shadows,
who
to
knew
kill
his reputation
darkness,
for unshakable
to protect
integrity.
those who cannot
They
protect
lied to
themselves.
you, Avery called
Dmitry
out,
laughed,
taking the
but
risk of
there was no
exposing
humor in
herself.
it.
Check your
Protection.
phones.
Is that
Every
what you
major
call what
network
happened
is
in
running the
Bosnia?
story.
43
Defense
men
contractors
dead in one
have been
night.
killing SEALs
43
for
child
profit.
traffickers eliminated.
One of the
Helen
attackers, still in
corrected.
cover, pulled
Would
out
you
his
prefer
phone.
I had let them
The glow
continue?
illuminated his shocked
I would prefer
expression
you had
as he read
followed
the breaking
orders
news.
and extracted
Holy
without engaging.
Master Chief,
Whose
is
orders,
this real?
Dmitry? The ones
Real
that
as the
came from
funeral
officials
flags given to
profiting from the
families who
trade,
deserved
or the
better,
ones written
Brennan
on the
replied.
faces of
You're on the
317
wrong side of
children
this
waiting
fight,
to be
boys.
sold.
The
two
sound of
circled each
approaching
other
sirens
slowly,
filled the
not
night.
aggressively,
Federal
but like
and
old
local law
predators
enforcement
recognizing
converging
territory.
on the suburban
The gathered
battlefield.
Marines watched in
The
fascination
Apache helicopters
as two
descended
legends
lower.
sized each other up.
Their spotlights
You know
turning
why
the
I'm
yard
here,
into stark
Dmitry
relief.
said.
Hydra
Prometheus
sent you?
operators.
Hydra
This is
pays
the
me.
FBI.
There's a difference.
An amplified voice
Not much
announced.
of one.
You're
Dmitry
surrounded.
shrugged.
Lay down your
A
weapons
man must
and
eat.
exit with your hands
Even old
visible.
wolves need
For a
sustenance.
moment, the balance
And if
hung
I
on a
said the
knife's
Academy
edge.
could use
20
someone with
trained
your
killers
skills,
weighing loyalty against
I would say
law.
you're trying to turn
Orders
me,
against
little
ghost.
ghost.
Then
It won't
Senior
work.
Chief Rodriguez
I'm
made
not
his
trying to
decision.
turn you.
He stood
I'm
up,
offering
placed
you
his
what
rifle
Hydra
on the
never
ground,
could.
and raised his
A
hand.
chance to matter again.
I'm not fighting
To
Americans
teach
to
instead of
protect
hunt.
defense
To
contractors
build instead
not
of destroy.
happening. One by one,
Pretty words,
the other operators
but we both
followed
know how
suit.
this ends.
Men who'd stormed compounds in
Helen
Fallujah
agreed.
and Kandahar,
But not
surrendering
today.
in suburban San
Today,
Diego.
you're going to help me
choosing
teach
teach
these
these Marines a
over
lesson
orders.
about tracking.
As FBI agents mobbed
Dmitry
in to
raised
secure
an
the scene,
eyebrow. Avery noticed
want me
one
to train your
operator
students?
hadn't surrendered.
I want you to hunt
He was
them.
moving through the smoke
7
toward her
Marines,
position.
30 minutes
Weapon
head
raised.
start.
She
Anywhere on
recognized him
base.
from the Titan
If even
security
one
files.
evades you for 3
Kurt
hours,
Wagner,
you walk
former
away,
Delta Force,
and Hydra
never
never
hears
hears
from
from
you
war
again.
crimes in Syria.
And when I
I catch them all?
You killed everything we
then
built.
we settle our
He
business.
snarled,
Finger moving
Dmitri
to the trigger.
considered this.
The shot was
Agreed,
impossibly
but
loud
I choose
in
the
confined
conditions.
space. But it
Name
wasn't
them.
Wagner's weapon that
They
fired.
can use any resources
Master
on base
Chief
except
Brennan stood
vehicles
behind the
or
falling
outside
operator.
help.
Smoke
I
rising
track
from
old
his
school.
rifle. No
Clear,
technology,
he announced
just
calmly.
skill. As if this was
Helen
just
looked at her
another
seven
training
students.
exercise.
Their faces
Wagner
showed fear,
collapsed,
but also
his weapon clattering
determination.
across the floor.
You heard him.
The
30
FBI
minutes
medical
head start.
team rushed in,
Beginning
but
now.
Avery could see it was
The
too
7
late.
Marines
Scattered
scattered
mass
immediately,
shot from a man
each
who
heading
didn't
in
miss.
different directions.
He gave me no choice.
Jake went north
Brennan
toward
said
the motor
quietly.
pool.
Maria
He was
headed
going
for
to
the
kill
barracks
you.
complex.
I know.
Derek
She put
disappeared
her
into
hand
the
on his
administrative
shoulder,
buildings,
feeling the tension
The
in
others
his
split
muscles.
up, using
You
what they'd
saved my
learned
life.
about the base over
Your
their
father
years of
would have done the
service.
same for me.
Dmitri watched
The
them
scene
go
outside
with
looked like a
professional
war
interest.
zone.
Federal
The technical
agents
one will
processing
try to use
surrendered
security
operators
cameras
to
to track me.
helicopters
The
overhead.
woman will blend
Media
with others
vans
in her
arriving
barracks.
as word
The
spread of
angry
the
one,
confrontation.
Morrison,
the quiet suburban
he'll try to
street
think
had
like
become
his
ground zero
grandfather.
for the collapse
Maybe,
of Prometheus.
Helen said.
Walsh
or maybe
arrived
they'll
with a full
surprise us
prosecution
both.
team.
Children don't
Immediately
surprise
taking
me
charge
anymore.
of the legal battlefield.
These aren't children.
Avery,
They're
we have
Marines who
enough.
faced death
The
last
evidence,
night
the
and showed up to
witnesses,
train
the
this
public
morning.
pressure.
That makes them
Congress is calling
extraordinary.
emergency hearings.
For the next
The
30
president
minutes,
wants a full
Helen
briefing.
and Dimitri stood
Prometheus
in comfortable
is
silence,
finished.
while the generals
What about
and gathered
Admiral
Marines
Huxley?
watched nervously.
Being transferred to
This
military
wasn't what
custody
anyone had
pending
expected from the
court-martial.
first day of the
He'll
Ghost
face both
Protocol
civilian
Academy.
and military
At exactly
justice.
0800,
She paused.
Dimitri
You
began
did
to move.
You brought
He
down
didn't
the
run or
entire
hurry.
network.
He simply walked
But
to
Avery
where
felt
Derek
no
had
triumph,
disappeared,
only
knelt,
exhaustion,
examining
and
the
grief.
ground.
The cost
His fingers
had been
traced
so
patterns
high.
only he
Her
could see.
parents dead.
Technical specialists
Dozens of
tried to double back
operators
3
killed by
times to
equipment
confuse
failures.
his trail.
Families
Smart,
destroyed,
but he
trust
steps
shattered,
heavier on his
honor
right foot when
stained.
he's thinking.
Torres approached
Makes the
with a
pattern
tablet.
distinctive.
Ma'am,
He
you need
followed
to see
Derek's
this.
trail with
The screen
uncanny
showed a
precision,
live feed
moving
from
through the
Arlington
National
National
Cemetery,
Cemetery,
like he'd lived
hundreds
there
of
for
special
years.
operations
Within
veterans
40
had
minutes,
gathered.
he found
At
Derek
Section
hidden in
60,
a server
where the
room,
latest
tucked
casualties
behind
were buried.
equipment.
First
They stood in
catch,
silent
Dimitri
vigil,
announced
each
over the
holding
radio
a candle,
Helen had given
honoring
him.
the fallen
6
who had
to
been
go.
betrayed by those
Derek
meant to
emerged,
protect them.
frustrated
Among
but
them,
curious.
Avery
How?
recognized faces
You
from
think
the
too
news.
much.
Medal
Dimitri
of
told
Honor
him,
recipients,
thinking leaves patterns.
SEAL Team 6
Next
members,
time,
Delta
trust
Force
instinct.
operators. The next
The
2
elite
hours
of
were a
America's
military,
military in tracking.
united not
Dimitri
in combat,
found 4
but
more
in grief
Marines
and
with
determination
methodical
for
efficiency.
justice. Each time
should
he
go,
explained
Brennan
exactly
suggested.
how.
Pay
A
our
disturbed
respects.
spiderweb here,
It's
a partial
3,000 miles
footprint
away.
there. The way
There's
dust
a
had been
military
displaced on a
transport leaving in an
windowsill,
hour,
but 2
I
remained
may have
hidden.
arranged for us to
Jake
be on it.
and Maria. The flight east passed
Interesting,
in contemplative
Dimitri
silence.
admitted as the third
Avery
hour
read through her
approached.
father's notebook again.
The bullies are proving
seeing
most
new meanings in
capable.
his cryptic
Former
notes,
bullies,
now that she
Helen
understood the
corrected.
full scope
People
of
can
Prometheus.
change.
Not
He'd
in
been
one
so
night.
close to
No,
exposing everything.
but they can
Just
choose to
days
change in
away
one
from
moment.
bringing it all down
The rest is
when
just
they'd
follow
arranged
through.
his death.
With 10
The
minutes
aircraft
remaining,
landed at
Dimitri
Joint
stood in the
Base
center
Andrews
of the
as the sun
base,
rose over
eyes
Washington.
closed, listening.
A convoy
Then
waited
to
to
take
take
them to
The
Arlington,
woman is in the mess
where the
hall,
crowd had
hiding
grown to
where this
over
all began.
1,000 veterans,
Poetic,
maintaining
but
their
predictable.
vigil. As
He
Avery
found
walked
Maria
among
in
the
the
white
white
headstones
headstones
where Helen
she
had
found
found
them
the
the
father's
night
grave.
before.
The
She
inscription
emerged
read
shivering,
simply,
but proud to
Petty
have lasted
Officer
so
First
long.
Class Michael
5
Lane,
minutes left,
United
Helen
States
announced.
Navy. One
Loving
Marine father,
father,
hidden, silent
Dimitri's
warrior.
expression grew
She knelt
serious.
beside it.
This was
placing his
professional
challenge
pride
coin
now.
on the marble.
He moved with
around
renewed
her.
purpose,
Other family
checking
members
every
were
place
doing
a
the
person
same
could
at other
hide.
graves.
3
creating
minutes,
a constellation
2
of
minutes,
metal
1
on
minute.
stone. The alarm
Each
sounded.
coin representing
Jake
a debt
Morrison
of
had
honor
evaded
now
the
being
greatest
paid.
tracker in Russian
Next
history.
week's story reveals how a
Impossible,
female Marine
Dimitri
silenced
muttered.
an entire
Then
courtroom
louder,
with just
"Show
3
yourself,
words.
Morrison."
Make sure to
Jake emerged
subscribe
from
for
the
that
last place
incredible
anyone
moment
would
of
look.
justice.
He'd been standing
Master
in plain
Chief Brennan
sight
stood
among the
beside
Marines
her,
watching
his
the
own
exercise.
challenge coin in hand.
Having grabbed a
Your
different
father
uniform
would be
and blended
proud.
with the crowd.
You finished his
He'd
mission.
been there for 2
We
hours.
finished it,
hiding
she
in
corrected.
plain view.
All of us.
His grandfather's
The crowd
trick,
began to
Helen
disperse
said
as the morning
quietly.
progressed.
But
Tim
Avery
always
said
remained
the
at her
best hiding
father's
place
grave.
was where
She
everyone
had so
could see
much
you,
to tell him,
but no one would
so
look.
much he'd never know.
Dimitri
His
stared at
granddaughter
Jake
he'd
with
never
something
meet.
approaching
If she
respect.
ever had children,
You didn't run.
The cases she'd
You didn't
solve
hide.
using lessons
You became
he'd taught.
background. The justice finally delivered
Instructor
for his
Carter
death.
taught us this morning.
Walsh approached
We're always
quietly.
being watched.
The Attorney
So,
General wants to
I figured
offer you
why
a
fight it?
position.
Just become
leading a
someone
new
not
task
worth
force
watching.
investigating
Dimitri
defense
turned to
contractor
Helen.
fraud.
One evaded
Full
me.
resources,
By our agreement,
independent
I walk
authority.
away.
Answering
Or
only
you
to
stay
the
and
AG,
teach.
Helen offered. Hunting the
Hydra
remnants
will
of
never pay
Prometheus
you what you're worth.
and preventing
But
the
here,
next version.
you could matter.
Because there will
Here,
be attempts
you
to
could
resurrect
create
legends under
legends
different
instead of
names.
hunting them.
There always
I've
are.
killed 67
Avery
people
stood,
in my
brushing
career.
dirt from her knees.
And I've
I
killed
accept
73.
on one condition.
Our students don't
My
need to
team
repeat
comes
our
with
numbers.
me.
They need
Master
to
Chief
learn our
Brennan,
skills to
Lieutenant
prevent those
Commander
numbers.
Torres,
Dimitri
the others
was
who stood
quiet
with
for a
me.
long moment.
They've proven their
Then he pulled
integrity.
out a satellite phone
Done.
and dialed a number.
When can you start?
He spoke rapid Russian.
We've already
then
switched
started.
to English for Helen's
As they walked
benefit.
back through the
This
cemetery,
is Volkov.
Avery
Contract
noticed a woman
terminated.
in her 60s
Phantom
placing
6 is
flowers
dead.
on a grave.
Has been for 15
She recognized
years.
her from photographs.
Some janitor is playing
Thomas
soldier
Kramer's
with
widow.
children. The
Not
whistleblower
worth my
who had
time.
tried to expose
He hung up
Flex-Tech's
and
fraud
tossed the
and
phone
paid
into
with
a
his
nearby
life.
trash can.
Avery approached
approached
I
slowly.
assume instructor positions
Mrs. Kramer
come with room and
The woman
board.
looked up,
Helen
tears
smiled.
streaming down her face.
Welcome to Ghost Protocol
You're the
Academy,
one who caught them,
Instructor Volkov.
who made them pay for what
the gathered
they did to
Marines
Tom.
erupted in surprise.
Your
and
husband was a
confusion.
hero.
General
He tried
Anderson
to save
stepped
lives.
forward. We
He
can't
was an
just
engineer
hire a
who
Russian
loved puzzles.
operative.
The
former
equipment
Russian
failures were a
operative.
puzzle he couldn't
Dmitri
ignore.
corrected.
She touched
I
the
defected
headstone
the
gently.
moment I threw that
They
phone
killed
away.
him for his
Besides,
curiosity.
you need me.
They killed him
How
because
many of
he
your
threatened their
instructors have
profits.
successfully
But his
tracked
death
targets
wasn't
through
in vain.
Siberian winters
The evidence
and
he
Chechen
gathered
mountains?
saved lives.
This is
Exposed
highly
the truth.
irregular. General
Mrs.
Thompson
Kramer pulled out an
protested.
envelope.
So is
He
a
left
janitor
this for
who's really
whoever
a special
finally
operations
listened.
legend.
Said to
Helen
give it to
pointed
the
out.
person who brought
The academy
justice.
isn't about regular.
Inside was a flash
It's about
drive
effective.
and a handwritten note.
Over the next
The
week,
truth doesn't
word
die.
spread throughout
It
the
waits.
military community.
Thank you for listening.
Ghost Protocol
The flash
Academy
drive
was
contained
real,
Thomas
and it was
Kramer's
unlike
personal
anything that had
investigation.
existed before.
Even more extensive
no
than what
high-tech
Avery had
facilities,
found.
no
Design
elaborate
flaws
equipment,
deliberately introduced.
just two aging
Test
warriors
results
teaching young
falsified with
Marines to
mathematical
navigate
precision.
darkness.
both
a
literal
systematic
and metaphorical
approach to creating equipment.
The first
that would
official
fail
class
at
started with
statistically
28
acceptable
volunteers
rates.
from all
This is
service
evidence
branches.
of premeditated
Helen's original
murder,
7 became
Torres
squad
said,
leaders,
reading over
having
her
learned
shoulder.
more in one night
They
of terror
calculated
than
exactly
most
how
learned in
many
years
deaths
of
they
training.
could cause
Jake
without
Morrison
triggering
proved especially
investigation.
adept. His
Until
natural
my father
athleticism
started connecting
combined with his
dots,
grandfather's
Avery replied.
genetic gifts for
He
night
saw the
vision,
pattern because
making
he
him
was looking
exceptional
for it.
in darkness
Her phone rang.
operations. The caller ID
But-
showed a
but
blocked
more
number,
importantly,
but she
his
recognized the voice
transformation from
immediately.
bully to protector
The elderly man
became
who
the
claimed
model
to
for
speak
others.
for Prometheus.
He spent
Congratulations,
extra hours
Ms.
training
Lane.
newer students,
You've won this
especially
round.
those who reminded
This isn't a
him
game
of who he used to be.
Everything is a game.
Maria
at sufficient
Santos
scale.
discovered she
You've
had
cost
an
us a
uncanny
profitable
ability for
operation,
sound
but
recognition,
there are others
able to
There
identify
always are.
individuals by
I'll
breathing
find
patterns
them.
and heartbeats
I'm
from
counting on
remarkable
it.
distances.
You see,
she
Prometheus
developed a
needed to
training
evolve.
module
It
called
had become
acoustic
complacent,
signature recognition.
sloppy.
You've
That
done
would
us a
become
favor
standard
by
in
forcing
special
adaptation.
operations training
You're saying
worldwide.
this was planned?
Derek Chen
Not
created
planned,
a hybrid
but
approach,
not entirely
combining
unwelcome.
traditional
The
tracking
Phoenix
with
burns
modern
to be reborn
technology
stronger
in ways
Prometheus
that enhance
brings
rather
fire
than
to
replace
humanity.
human skills.
Both myths
His
involved
innovations would
destruction
eventually
preceding
revolutionize
advancement.
surveillance
Philosophy won't
countermeasures,
protect you from
but it was
prosecution.
Helen herself
No,
who
but
proved
jurisdiction
most
will.
transformative.
I'm
Her
calling
teaching
from
method was
international
unorthodox.
waters on a ship
Instead of
flagged to
breaking
no
students
nation.
down, she
The
built
money
them up
is in
from their
cryptocurrencies
failures.
untraceable
Every mistake
to any
became a
individual.
lesson.
The
Every
operations
weakness, a
continue
potential
under names
strength.
you'll never discover.
You don't
until
create
bodies
warriors
start
by
appearing.
destroying people.
Then I'll keep
she told
investigating.
General Anderson during
Good.
one of his
You're
observation
your father's
visits.
daughter.
You
He was
create
the
them
best
by showing them
adversary
they're
we ever
capable
had.
of more than they imagined.
Forced us to improve.
3 weeks into the
Innovate.
Academy's
Evolve.
operation,
You'll
an
do the
unexpected
same.
visitor arrived.
This isn't a compliment.
Anna Volkov.
You murdered him.
Now Anna Patterson.
We removed an
drove
obstacle.
onto base
There's
with
a
her
difference,
17-year-old
though.
daughter
I don't expect
Helena.
you to appreciate the
The girl was
distinction.
tall,
What do you
athletic,
want?
with her mother's
To
sharp
offer you one
features
last
and
piece of
determined
information?
eyes.
Call it
Is it
professional
true?
courtesy.
Anna asked
Check
Helen
Senator
directly.
Harrison's voting record
Uncle
on
Dimitri
defense
is teaching here?
appropriations. Compare it to his
Helen
personal
confirmed.
investment portfolio.
Does that bother you?
You'll find interesting
He hunted
correlations.
you for 30 years.
The line went
You saved
dead.
my life.
Avery
The irony
immediately
is
began researching.
substantial.
Senator James
Young
Harrison,
Helena stepped
chairman of the
forward.
Armed Services
I want to
Committee,
apply
had
for the
consistently
academy.
voted for increased
Helen
defense
studied her
spending
carefully.
while personally
You're too
investing
young.
in companies
Minimum
that
age is
benefited from
18.
those appropriations.
You were 17 when you
He's
joined the
feeding
military.
us targets,
Helena
Torres
countered.
observed,
Lied about
using
your
us
age
to
get in
eliminate
early.
competition
How do you
or
know that?
problematic allies.
Mom kept newspaper
Let him,
clippings.
Avery replied.
Every mention of Phantom
Every
6,
corrupt
every
official we
rumor,
remove is
every
a victory,
speculation.
regardless of who
I've been
benefits.
studying you my entire
The investigation
life.
into Senator
Studying
Harrison
and
would
doing
take
are different
months,
things.
but the pattern
Then
was
let
clear.
me do.
Prometheus
at
hadn't
Anna,
been a
who
single
nodded.
conspiracy.
She's been
but a
training
cancer
since she could walk.
metastasized
Dimitri
throughout the
may have
defense
hunted you,
establishment.
but he
Cutting
also
out
taught
one
his niece's
tumor
daughter
only
everything
revealed
he knew
others.
about survival.
6 months later,
Not
Avery
everything,
stood in a federal
Dimitri
courthouse in
said,
San Diego,
appearing from nowhere,
watching
as was
as
his
Admiral
habit.
Grant Huxley
But
was
enough to
sentenced
make her
life
interesting.
in military
The
prison.
reunion between
He'd been
Dimitri and
convicted
Anna
on
was
17
touching in its
counts of
simplicity.
conspiracy to commit
The old
murder,
tracker hugged
hundreds
his
of
great
counts
niece
of
with genuine
fraud,
affection
and treason
then
for
turned to
providing
Helena with
intelligence to
professional
enemy
assessment.
forces. He stood at
Show me
attention
what you
as the
remember,
verdict was read.
he said.
His uniform
For the next
stripped
hour,
of all
Helena
decorations
demonstrated
except
skills
the
that
basic
put some
service
of the
ribbons.
Marine students
The
to
trident he had
shame.
worn with such
Tracking,
pride had been
evasion,
formally removed
acoustic
in a
targeting,
ceremony where
even
every
basic
SEAL present
pressure
turned their
techniques.
backs on him.
When she
Do you
finished,
have anything to
both
say?
Helen and Dimitri
The judge
were
asked.
impressed.
Huxley looked
3 months,
directly at Avery.
Helen's decided.
I regret
You trained with the
nothing.
Marines for 3
Everything
months.
I did was for
If you
American
keep up,
security.
you can enter the academy
You killed
on your
Americans
18th
for
birthday.
money. The judge
Helena's
replied.
face lit up.
That's not
I won't
patriotism.
disappoint you.
It's greed
It's not
wrapped
about
in a
disappointing
flag.
me.
As
It's
they
about
let him
honoring
away,
those
Huxley
who came
maintained
before.
military bearing.
Your mother
but
survived
Avery saw
hell.
the truth in his
Make
eyes.
sure her sacrifice
He was a
means
broken
something.
man. His
As
identity
the weeks
shattered,
turned into
his
months,
legacy
the
destroyed.
Ghost Protocol
The
Academy
warrior who
evolved
had
from an
survived
experiment
impossible
into an
missions
institution.
undone by
The
his own
Pentagon
corruption.
quietly funded expansions.
Outside the courthouse,
though Helen
media
insisted
waited
on
with
maintaining
cameras
the
and
minimalist
questions.
approach.
Avery
No
had
fancy
become
building
the face of the
or high-tech
investigation.
simulators.
The woman
Just
who had brought
practical
down
training
Prometheus
in real-world
but she deflected
conditions.
attention to the real
The
heroes.
accident happened during
This
week
victory
12.
belongs to the
A
operators
night training
who spoke
exercise
truth
went
to
wrong
power when a
she told
sudden
the
storm
cameras.
hit Camp
The
Pendleton.
veterans who risked
Zero
everything to
visibility,
expose
60
corruption.
knot winds,
The families who
horizontal
never
rain.
stopped asking questions
Two
about their
students,
loved ones'
Roberts
deaths,
and Kim,
were
were
separated separated
pushed
from their
forward.
unit in the
What's
mountains
next for
east
you,
of
Miz?
base. Radio communications
continues.
were down.
Prometheus
Standard
was one
search and
program.
rescue couldn't
There are
operate
others
in the
hiding in
conditions.
classification
Helen
shadows,
suited up without
trading
hesitation.
American lives for
At
profit.
58,
We're
she
going to
shouldn't have
find
been
them
able
all.
to do what came next.
Master Chief Brennan
But
stood
muscle
beside
memory
her,
doesn't
now
age the
officially
same way
part of
muscles
her task
do.
force.
She
Lieutenant
disappeared
Commander
into the storm
Torres
with
flanked
only
her other
basic
side,
gear and an
wearing
old-fashioned
civilian
compass,
clothes but maintaining
Jake
military
insisted on
posture.
going with her.
They had become
"You trained
her
us for
core
this,"
team,
he argued,
joined by a
"Let us
dozen
help.
other investigators
This isn't training,
committed to
Morrison.
reforming
This is
defense
real
contracting.
That's why you
That
need
evening,
backup.
they
My
gathered at a
grandfather
beach
wouldn't
bar
let
in
you go
Coronado.
alone.
The same
Helen
place
studied
where
him for a
SEALs had
moment,
celebrated
then nodded.
successful
Gear
missions
up.
for decades.
We leave in 2
The
minutes.
owner, a former
They went into
Team
the
6
storm
operator,
together,
had
teacher
closed
and
it to the
student,
public,
legend and
allowing
legacy.
the task force and
The wind was
supportive
so
veterans
strong
to
it could knock a
decompress
person
privately.
off their feet.
To Phoenix,
The rain
Brennan
so
raised his
heavy
beer.
it was like walking
Who
through
started
a
this
waterfall.
fight?
To
But
Phoenix,
Helen moved through
the
it
room
like she was
echoed.
born to
Avery
it,
raised her
and
own
Jake
glass.
followed,
To the
trusting her
operators we
completely.
lost, and the ones
They found
we'll
Roberts
save.
first.
Hypothermic and
They
disoriented.
drank in silence,
sheltering
each
in a
carrying their
shallow
own
cave.
memories of friends
Helen
lost to
immediately
preventable
began medical
failures.
treatment.
The
While
investigation
Jake went
had
after
succeeded,
Kid,
but
using
the
the
cost
search
was
pattern
counted in
Helen
folded
had taught him.
flags and
He
grieving
found her
families.
20 minutes later.
Torres
injured
pulled out his
but
phone.
alive.
You all
her
need
ankle
to see
broken
this.
from a fall.
The screen
The
showed
journey
a news
back
report
took
from
4
Syria.
hours. American Special
4 hours of
Operations
carrying
Forces
injured
had
Marines
successfully
through a storm
rescued
that
12
would have killed
hostages
most people.
using new
But
equipment
Helen
that
and
had
Jake
performed
brought them
flawlessly
home
under
alive.
extreme conditions.
Colonel Richards met
The
them
gear
at the
came
base
from a
medical
company
center.
Avery's
That
task
was
force
insane.
had vetted and
Heroic,
approved,
but
replacing
insane.
Flex-Tech's
Helen was
defective
exhausted,
products.
but unbowed.
First confirmed
It was
save,
necessary.
Williams noted.
We don't leave people
Your work is
behind.
already protecting
You could have died
operators.
out there.
But
Our
we didn't.
work, and
Avery
now every
corrected.
student at the
She
academy
looked around the
knows
room at the
that we
faces
practice
of
what we
warriors
preach.
who'd chosen
That changes
justice over
everything.
comfortable soulmates.
She was right.
None of
After
this
that
happens
night,
without all
the
of us.
Academy's reputation
Her phone buzzed with the
solidified.
encrypted message.
These weren't just
the elderly
instructors teaching
Prometheus
theory.
voice had sent
They were
coordinates
practitioners
and a
who would
single
risk
word,
everything for their
Leviathan.
students. 6
She
months
showed
into
it to
the
Brennan,
Academy's
who
operation,
immediately
the
recognized
real
the
test
location.
came.
That's
a
in the
Hydra
mountains of
cell
Colorado,
attempted to infiltrate
Cheyenne
Camp
Mountain
Pendleton,
area, but
targeting
not the
the
NORAD
Academy
facility.
specifically.
Another black
12
site
operatives,
has to
highly
be.
trained.
That area is
using the
riddled
cover
with
of a
classified
congressional inspection
installations.
visit. Avery
They
made
didn't
a
expect
decision.
the janitors,
We investigate
groundskeepers,
tomorrow.
and
If
food
Prometheus
service
is trying
workers
to
to be
resurrect
academy
under a new
graduates
name,
placed
we stop it
specifically to
before it
watch for
takes
such
root.
infiltration.
It could be a trap.
The attack came at
Torres
0300
Everything
hours.
could be a trap.
Or it would
That doesn't
have,
mean we
if
stop
Helen
moving
hadn't
forward.
already positioned
The
her
conversation
students.
shifted
The Hydra
to
operatives
operational
walked
planning,
into a
but
trap
Avery's
they couldn't
mind
see
drifted
coming.
to her father.
Every shadow
Would he
held a
approve
ghost.
of what she'd become?
Every corner
a hunter of
concealed a
shadows,
protector.
destroyer
The takedown
of
was swift,
conspiracies,
silent,
the woman who
and
turned
complete.
his death into
No
a
shots
catalyst for
fired,
reformation.
no alarms raised.
She thought he would.
12 Hydra
Phoenix had
operatives
always
captured
believed
without
in
a
justice
single
over
casualty
comfort,
on either
truth
side.
over
How?
convenience.
The Hydra
She was
leader
continuing
demanded
his
as he was
mission with
processed.
methods he couldn't have
We
imagined.
had perfect
Backed
intelligence.
by authorities
We
he'd
knew your
never have
patterns,
gotten.
your weaknesses.
As midnight approached,
Helen
the gathering
smiled
began
coldly.
to disperse.
You had intelligence
Veterans
on
and Phantom
Phantom
6
numbers,
but I'm
promised
not
to
her
maintain
anymore.
vigilance.
I'm something
Offered
better.
support for
I'm a
future
teacher,
operations.
and I've taught
a
318
network of integrity
students
so
forming
far.
to replace the
Each
Brotherhood's
one is now a
corruption.
ghost.
Captain
Each one is
Sarah
watching.
Mitchell appeared at
Good
Avery's
luck finding
table,
them all.
still in uniform.
The Hydra
Having
network
flown
began
in
to
from
collapse
Bahrain
after
for
the
that.
sentencing.
Not through
My uncle
military
asked to
action,
see me
but
before
through
they took him
paranoia.
away.
They couldn't
He wanted
trust
me to
anyone.
give you a message.
Couldn't predict where
Avery
the next
tensed.
ghost might be
What
hiding.
message?
The
He said
janitor
the
might
real
be an
Prometheus
academy
isn't a
graduate,
program or
the secretary,
organization.
the mechanic,
It's an idea.
the cook. The idea
Anyone
that
could
American
be a
dominance
ghost.
justifies
General
any
Anderson
means.
visited the academy
Until that
on its
idea
first
dies,
anniversary.
new versions
The
will keep
28
emerging.
original students had
He's
become
probably right.
200.
He
The
also
program
said
had
you're the
expanded to
antibody
3
the
other
system
bases,
needed.
all following
That your father
Helen's
would be
minimalist
proud
model.
of what you've accomplished.
You've revolutionized
Sarah
special
paused.
operations training.
I think he
told
actually
Helen.
respects
The
you
president
in his
wants to
twisted
award
way.
you the Medal of Freedom.
The feeling isn't
I already
mutual.
have all the medals I
I didn't
need,
expect it
Helen
would be.
replied.
Sarah stood
Give it to Jake
leave,
Morrison.
then turned back.
He's the future of
My
the
ship
program.
needs a new intelligence
Morrison,
specialist.
the Marine who
Someone
shoved
trained
you,
in pattern
the Marine who learned
recognition
from his
and
threat
mistakes.
assessment.
The
The
Marine who
position
went into a
comes with a
storm to
commission,
save others.
if you're interested.
The Marine who was
I'm
becoming
honored,
the
but
instructor
my war
his
is here
grandfather would
in
be proud of.
courtrooms and
Jake
congressional
had indeed
hearings,
flourished.
not on the
His
ocean.
natural leadership,
The offer
tempered
stands
by
by humility,
humility,
mind.
learned through failure,
The Navy could use
made
more
him an
officers
ideal
with your
instructor
integrity.
candidate.
After
He
Sarah
was scheduled
left,
to take
Avery
over the
walked
East
alone
Coast
to the
Academy
beach.
when it
The
opened.
Pacific
Maria
Ocean
Santos had been
endlessly
recruited by
westward
naval
toward
intelligence.
bases in Japan,
Her acoustic
Korea,
skills invaluable
Guam,
for submarine
each hosting
detection
American
and
forces
underwater
equipped
surveillance.
with gear that might
But
save
she
or doom
returned
them,
to teach monthly
depending on
workshops,
contractor
never
honesty.
forgetting where her
Her phone
transformation
rang one
began.
final time.
Derek Chen
Director
had
of
developed
National
an entirely
Intelligence,
new field
the
of
president's
study,
senior advisor
integrated
on all
tactical
intelligence
analysis.
matters.
Combining
Lane,
human
the
intuition
president
with
wants to thank you
technological
personally for your
capability.
service.
The NSA
There's
had
a Medal
tried
of
to
Freedom
recruit
with
him
your name on
repeatedly,
it,
but he
I don't
chose to
need
stay at
medals,
the
Director.
academy. I need
Dmitry
resources to
Volkov
continue
had
the
become something
investigation.
no one expected.
You'll have them, beloved.
Blank check.
His
Whatever
gruff
you need.
exterior
The
hid a
president
genuine
is
care
serious
for his
about
students.
reform.
His
What
tracking
about
classes
Leviathan?
were legendary.
Silence
but it
on
was
the
his
line.
life
Then,
lessons that students
how do you know
remembered
that
most.
name?
Every
Anonymous
choice
tip.
leaves a
What
trail,
is it?
he would say.
Theoretical at this
Make sure
point.
yours
A
leads
proposed
somewhere worth
merger of
going.
defense
defense
Young
contractors
Helena
into a
Patterson had
single
not only
entity
met
controlling
expectations, but
70%
exceeded
of
them.
military
On her
procurement.
18th birthday,
It would
she
make
formally
Prometheus
entered the
look like a
academy
corner
and
store.
completed the course in
When?
record time.
Vote
She
is
would
next
eventually
month
become the
behind
youngest
closed
instructor
doors.
in academy
We've been
history,
trying to stop it,
specializing
but the
in what she
lobbying is
called
intense.
inherited instinct.
Send me everything.
Teaching
We'll make
students
it public
to
before
recognize
they
and
can
develop
vote.
genetic
That's
predispositions
dangerous,
for
Avery.
certain skills.
These people have resources
The second
that dwarf
anniversary
what
of the
you
academy
faced.
brought an
Then I'd better
unexpected
have
guest.
good backup.
The president
She ended the
himself
call and
arrived,
looked back at the
not
bar
with
where her
fanfare,
team
but
was still
quietly.
planning.
warriors
wanting
who
to
had traded
observe
bullets
without
for
disrupting
subpoenas,
training.
violence
He
for
watched
justice.
Helen lead a night
They'd
navigation
face whatever
exercise.
came next together.
70-year-old
Her father's
Dimitri
challenge
demonstrated
coin caught
tracking
moonlight in her
techniques,
pocket,
and Jake
she
Morrison
pulled it
teach
out,
close
reading the
quarters
inscription
combat
on the
with
back
patience
she'd never
his younger
noticed
self
before.
could never
The
have
only
managed.
easy day was yesterday.
This is not what I expected.
Tomorrow would be harder,
the president admitted.
Leviathan
to Helen.
would be stronger
I thought
than
it would be
Prometheus,
more
better prepared,
military,
more ruthless.
It is military,
but she
Helen
had
replied.
advantages her
Just
father
not
never
the kind
did.
you're used to.
Public
We're
support,
not creating
legal
super
authority,
soldiers.
and
We're
a team of
creating
operators who had
superhumans,
chosen truth
people who can
over
fight if
comfort.
needed.
But
The
choose
war against
protection over
corruption
aggression,
wasn't ending.
wisdom
It was
over
evolving.
violence.
But so
and
was
it
she.
works. Walking back
In
to
2
the bar,
years,
she
Academy
found Brennan
graduates
waiting
have
outside.
prevented 17
Master
terrorist
Chief,
attacks.
how do you feel
rescued
about
43
Colorado?
kidnapped victims,
Rocky Mountains,
and identified
thin air,
over 100
probably
embedded
heavily
foreign
defended
assets,
secret installations.
all without firing
He
a
grinned.
single shot.
Sounds
or
like a
making
good
a
time.
single headline.
Gather the team.
Ghosts
We leave
indeed,
at dawn.
the president murmured.
Roger that, ma'am.
What do you need from
As
me?
they re-entered the bar,
Nothing.
Avery
The less
noticed someone had
official
added her
attention we
father's
receive,
photo
the more
to the wall
effective
of
we
honor,
become.
alongside
Ghosts
other
work best
operators
when no
who
one
believes
believes
they
they
exist.
But
That
unlike
evening,
the others,
Helen stood
his
in the
photo
mess hall
had a new
where it all
addition,
began.
A small
It had been
plaque
renovated
reading
after the
"Truth Warrior."
Kozlov incident.
Torres
But
raised
she'd
the final
insisted on
toast.
keeping one
To
thing.
those who
The
fight in
spot where
shadows
Jake had
to
shoved
bring
her
light
was marked with
the
a
room
small
echoed the
plaque that
sentiment,
read, "Voices
"Every
united in
transformation
purpose begins with a
outside
choice."
the Pacific waves
Jake found her
continued
there,
their
holding
eternal
2
rhythm,
cups of coffee,
indifferent to
Colombian
human struggles,
single origin,
but inside,
just how
a
you
brotherhood
like it.
and
They
sisterhood
stood
of
in
integrity
comfortable
prepared
silence,
for the next
teacher and
battle.
student,
The
past and
investigation
future.
into Leviathan
Do you ever
would
regret
reveal
it?
connections
Jake
between
asked.
defense
Coming out of
contractors
hiding,
and pharmaceutical
I regret that it
companies
took me
developing
15
prohibited
years to realize
biological
hiding
weapons.
wasn't living.
It would
Your
expose
grandfather
senators
tried to
taking
tell me
bribes,
in his
generals
letter,
selling
but I
secrets,
wasn't ready to hear
and
it.
CEOs
He
treating
wrote to
American
you
lives as
every
acceptable
month
losses.
for 15 years.
I never
But
replied,
that was tomorrow's
but he kept
fight.
writing, telling
Tonight,
me about you,
they remembered
about
the
your
fallen,
sister,
about
celebrated
the world
the small
moving
victory,
forward,
and prepared
He
for the
knew I was
larger war
alive.
ahead. He was the only one
As the
who
gathering
never
finally
doubted.
ended,
Jake
Avery
pulled
stood
out
in
a
the
parking
parking
lot,
lot,
looking
he
at
left
the
this
stars.
for you.
Mom
Somewhere
gave it
up
to me
there,
after she heard
satellites
about the
built by
academy.
defense
She
contractors
said Grandpa
circled
made her
endlessly,
promise to deliver
watching
it if you ever
everything,
surfaced,
recording movements,
Helen opened it with
enabling
trembling
both
hands.
protection and
Inside was a
surveillance.
photo.
Her phone
Tim
showed
Morrison's
17
team
missed
from
calls
Bosnia,
from unknown
with
numbers.
Helen at the center.
The Leviathan was
and a
already
simple note.
reacting to the threat she posed.
You were never just
Good.
a ghost.
Let them
you were our
worry.
light in
Let
the
them
darkness.
scramble.
Time
Let
to
them know
shine
that
again.
Phoenix's daughter was
Tim.
coming for them.
He
with
loved
the same
you,
relentless
Jake said
determination,
simply, not
that had brought
romantically,
down Prometheus.
but as a warrior loves
Master
their
Chief
commander.
Brennan appeared
with
beside her.
absolute trust
Ma'am,
and
the
respect.
transport to
I
Colorado
loved
was
him too,
arranged.
Helen admitted.
0600
All of them.
departure.
That's why
Outstanding,
losing them
and
broke
Master
something
Chief
in me that took
thank
15
you for
years
everything.
to heal.
Thank you, ma'am.
But you did heal. You gave us a chance
No.
to fight for something
I learned
that
to function
matters.
despite the break.
They stood in
There's a
comfortable
difference.
silence.
But
Two
teaching,
warriors from
building
different
this
generations,
academy,
watching
united
you
by
all
purpose.
transform. The parking
That's been
lot
better
emptied,
than healing.
leaving only their
It's been
vehicles
purpose.
and the sound of
A
distant
knock at the door
waves.
interrupted them.
Your father would be
Maria
proud,
Santos
Brennan
entered with
said
Derek
quietly,
Chen
and
I
the
hope
other
so.
original 7.
I know
now
so.
all instructors
You didn't just
or
complete
instructor
his mission.
candidates.
You exceeded.
Ma'am, Maria
He wanted
said
to expose
formally,
the truth.
then broke into
You're
a
ensuring
grin.
it never
We
happens
wanted
again.
to thank you.
A helicopter
2
passed
years ago,
overhead.
we were bullies who
Navigation
shoved
lights
an
blinking
old woman.
steadily against
Today
the
we're
darkening
protectors.
California sky.
That transformation
the rhythmic
is because
thump
of you.
rotor blades echoed
Helen
off
shook
the
her head.
surrounding buildings.
The transformation
a
was
sound
your
that had
choice.
become the
I
soundtrack
just
to
provided the
military life
opportunity.
in San Diego.
Still, Derek
this
added,
particular
holding up
aircraft,
a small box,
a Navy
we got you
MH-60
something.
Seahawk,
was
Inside
heading to
was
North
a new
Island
challenge
Naval
coin.
Air Station.
One side
carrying
showed
a
the
crew of
Ghost
8
Protocol
personnel
Academy
whose
insignia,
lives depended
entirely
entirely on the
protecting a
integrity
flame.
of their equipment.
The other side
every
had
bolt,
7 names,
every circuit,
the original students,
every piece of composite
surrounding a
armor
simple
represented a
inscription.
sacred trust
From
between the
darkness,
operators
light.
who risked their lives and
Helen
the
held the coin
contractors who
tightly,
built their
emotion
tools.
threatening to
It was a
overwhelm
trust that
her
had been
usual
violated
control.
too many times.
Thank
but
you.
tonight, at least, there's
These
more.
8 souls
Jake
flew
said.
with equipment that had
The
been
Pentagon
properly
approved
vetted,
your teaching
tested,
methodology
and
for
verified.
all special
Every
operations
flight was still a
training.
trust
The
exercise.
Ghost Protocol is
A
now
leap of
standard
faith
across
30 feet
all
above the
branches.
Pacific.
And
But now that
Maria
faith
added,
had stronger
they're
foundations,
creating a permanent position.
we should get some rest.
Director of
Avery
asymmetric
said,
warfare
watching the
training.
helicopter disappear
It's yours
into
if
the
you want
distance.
it. Helen
Its
looked
lights
at each of
becoming
them. These
indistinguishable
Marines who
from
had
the
begun
stars
as her
beginning to
tormentors and
emerge in the
became her
twilight
legacy.
sky.
I'm a janitor
Tomorrow
who
starts
teaches on
early.
the side.
Master
I
Chief
don't need
Brennan
titles.
nodded, his weathered
But we
face
need
showing
you,
the
Jake
exhaustion
said.
they all
The
felt
military
after the day's
needs you.
revelations
The
and
country needs you.
confrontations.
Everyone was
tomorrow
about to
starts
respond
early
when
in this
Dimitri
fight,
burst
he
in,
replied,
moving
with the
faster
wisdom
than
of someone
she'd
who'd
seen him
spent
move
3
in months.
decades rising
We
before
have a
dawn,
problem. A
preparing
big
for battles
problem.
both seen
He
and
handed her a
unseen.
satellite
But at
phone.
least now
On
we're
the other
fighting
end
the right
was a
enemy.
voice she hadn't
They
heard
parted
in
ways
30
in the
years.
parking lot, each
Hello,
driving to
Phantom
separate
6,
hotels scattered
the voice
across
said
the
in
city for
accented
security
English.
purposes.
Or should I say,
the Brotherhood might be
Instructor
wounded,
Carter,
but wounded animals
Helen's
were often
blood
the
ran
most
cold.
dangerous. Avery's
Nikolai,
rental sedan was
you're
followed
supposed to
by a
be
black
dead,
SUV
as are
containing
you.
FBI agents
But here we
who
are,
had volunteered
two
for the
ghosts
dangerous
still haunting
assignment
the
of
world.
keeping her alive.
I have something
These
you
weren't
want.
just any agents.
43
They were
children,
former military
ages 7 to
themselves,
12,
men and
familiar
women
ages,
who understood
yes?
the gravity of
You have
protecting
72
someone
hours to
exposed
come
such
alone,
deep corruption.
or history
They
repeats
maintained
itself.
perfect spacing,
The line
close
went
enough
dead.
to respond
Helen
to
stood
threats,
frozen
but
for a
far enough
moment,
to avoid
then began
drawing
moving
attention.
with purpose.
Professional
Morrison,
shadows guarding
contact
a
the
truth
Pentagon.
warrior.
Tell
In
them
her
ghost
room at a
protocol is
nondescript
going
business
active.
hotel in
Santos,
Mission Valley.
I need satellite
Avery
imagery
finally
of
allowed
everything
herself
within
to
500 miles of the
She kicked off
coordinates
her
I'm
boots,
about to give
feeling
you.
the carpet
Chen,
beneath feet.
hack
that had
into
been
every
standing on
database you
principle
can
all day
and find out how
The
Nikolai
room was standard
Volkov
corporate
survived.
anonymous.
Beige
Volkov,
walls,
Dimitri's
generic
face was
artwork,
pale.
a
My
bed that
brother
would be
is
neither
alive,
comfortable nor
apparently
uncomfortable.
so, Helen said
Perfect for
grimly,
someone who
and
needs
he's
recreating
disappeared into
Bosnia
normalcy
to draw
for a
me
few
out.
hours.
You
She
can't
pulled
go
her
alone,
father's notebook
Jake
from her
protested.
bag.
That's
Its
what he
leather cover
expects.
worn smooth
No,
by her
Helen
constant
smiled
handling over the
coldly.
past weeks.
He expects Phantom
Opening it
6
to the
come
last
alone,
page,
but
which
I'm
had
not
remained
Phantom
blank
6
throughout his
anymore.
life
I'm
and her
Instructor Carter,
investigation.
and
She
instructors
uncapped
never
a
go
pen.
anywhere without
The
their
words
students.
flowed without
She looked at the
conscious
original
thought,
7
as if her
now
father's
trained,
spirit was guiding
capable,
her hand.
and ready.
Mission
Lessons are
continues.
over.
Time for
Prometheus
the final
down,
exam.
Leviathan next.
What's the exam?
Your daughter
Maria
carries
asked,
the torch,
though she already knew the
Phoenix
answer.
too. We're
She
going to
studied
save
the
43
words,
children,
seeing in them
capture
both
or
an
eliminate an
ending and a
international
beginning.
trafficking ring,
Phoenix 2,
and prove
not
that
a
ghosts
replacement
don't
for her
work alone
father,
anymore,
but a
We
continuation
work
of his
as a
legacy.
team.
The torch
Jake
had been
stepped
passed
forward.
through death
All of
and
us?
grief,
All of us.
investigation,
Plus
and
70
justice.
more graduates
to
I'm
burn
calling
even
in.
brighter
Nikolai
in the next
expects
generation.
one ghost.
She
He's
closed the
getting
notebook
100.
reverently and placed
Dimitri's
it in his
hands
hands
were
safe,
clenched into
along
fists.
with the hard
My
drives
brother,
containing
I
evidence
thought he
that would
died
crack
in Chechnya.
Leviathan wide open.
So did everyone.
The
But
safe's
he's
digital
building a new
lock,
network,
engaged with
learning
a
from
soft
Hydra's
beat,
mistakes,
securing
This is
secrets
his
that
coming
could
out
reshape
party,
the
using
entire
children as
defense
bait to
industry.
draw out the one person
Tomorrow
who stopped
would
him
bring
before.
new battles against
Then we
an
stop
enemy
him
that
again.
had learned from
Jake said
Prometheus's
firmly.
mistakes.
Helen looked at
Leviathan
each of them.
would be
This
more
won't
careful,
be training,
more
This will be
sophisticated,
real combat,
more ruthless.
Some of you might
New
not come
enemies
home.
would emerge
With
from
respect,
boardrooms
ma'am,
and black
Maria
sites,
said,
armed with
we didn't
lawyers
come home
instead
2
of rifles,
years ago either.
wielding
We
classification
came home
stamps
different,
like
better,
weapons.
because
New
of you.
challenges would test
Now
her
it's
team's
our
return
resolve.
to pay